Welcome everybody to another Iceberg. Today I'll be tackling the long-awaited Yakuza Iceberg to coincide with the release of Yakuza 3's remake. I'll be covering topics from not just the mainline games, but the spin-off games and the Judgment series. Now, I know the series is technically the Like a Dragon series, but I've always called it the Yakuza series, so that's what I'm gonna do. If you end up liking the video, drop a like and comment about your favorite entry. Doesn't really seem like that much, but it helps me out a ton, and it's free. But if you do want to support me financially, I do have channel membership options that let you see videos early, have your name read out at the end of the video, and get extended previews. Also, subscribe if you want to see more icebergs. I've got plenty of icebergs made, and plenty more coming. Also, I've heard people pronouncing Yakuza as Yakuza. I've always pronounced it Yakuza, but in order to cover my bases, I'm going to use both pronunciations in this video. Without further ado, let's begin. What happened to Tanimura? Masayoshi Tanimura is one of the four protagonists of Yakuza 4, but unlike Kiryu, Saejima, and Akiyama, Tanimura has never appeared in any game outside of 4. Besides Like a Dragon Online, which I'll talk about in just a bit. This has led to a lot of speculation about what happened to the character after 4, and the real-world reason as to why he was never brought back. Let's first go over what happened to him in universe. Well, I'd like to, but we actually don't know. The first time that he's mentioned after 4 is in Yakuza 5, during the Amon clan storyline, in which Akiyama tries to contact him, but is unable to. Saejima claims that he's probably out playing Mahjong, but Akiyama assumes that he's gone into hiding upon getting the letter from the Amon clan. Finally, in Yakuza 8, aka Yakuza Infinite Wealth, Kiryu mentions that he's long since lost contact with him, and that he hopes that he's doing alright. So what about the out-of-universe explanation as to why he hasn't returned? In December of 2016, Tanimura's actor, Hiroki Naramaya, was accused of taking drugs by a tabloid magazine. He was eventually able to completely disprove these allegations, but because of Japan's extremely strict view of drugs, he was basically blacklisted from the industry, and so he left the world of acting. This led to Tanimura being redesigned and recasted in Yakuza 4's remaster. Many people to this day claim this as the reason why the character hasn't returned in a mainline game. But the problem with that is that Yakuza 5 was released in December of 2012, 4 years prior to the controversy, and he's nowhere to be found in that game. My guess as to why he hasn't come back is pretty simple. Tanimura's story is done. I mean, he literally gets the final boss fight in Yakuza 4. His story is complete. Sure, it would have made sense for him to appear in Yakuza 6, but why would he show up in 5, or any other mainline game for that matter? Real places. While most people know this, I think it's still worth mentioning. The 11 main settings in the Yakuza franchise are all based on real-life locations. They're not one-to-one, but they're heavily inspired by them, having very similar layouts, landmarks, and locations. Kamurocho, the main setting of most of the series, is directly modeled off of Kabukicho, a red light district, or entertainment district, in Tokyo. Nagasugai in Yakuza 5 is directly inspired by Nakasu, an entertainment district in Fukuoka City. Downtown Ryukyu from Yakuza 3, aka my favorite setting in the franchise just for its tropical vibes, is inspired by Naha, which is the capital of Okinawa. Kenicho from Yakuza 5 is directly inspired by Sake, which is a commercial district in Nagoya. Izazaki Eijincho, which is from most of the games after Yakuza 6, is directly designed off of Aizakichiko, an entertainment district in Yokohama. Abashiri Penitentiarium from Yakuza 5 is based on Abashiri Prison, a pretty infamous Japanese prison in Hokkaido. Sodenbori from Yakuza 2, 5, 0, 7, and The Man Who Erased His Name is based on Dotonbori, an entertainment district in Osaka. Shinseicho from Yakuza 2 is also directly based on a location from Osaka, this time being based on Shinsenkai. More on this location a bit later. Tsukimino from Yakuza 5, aka the worst location in the series. I love the Christmas vibes, and it's got fun sub-stories, but it is such a pain in the ass to navigate, is based on Sasakino, an entertainment district in Sapporo. Onamichi Hiroshima from Yakuza 6 is based on, well, Onamichi Hiroshima. Yeah, this is one of the 2 locations in the series that they actually use the real name of, the other being the setting of Yakuza 8 and Majima of the Caribbean, Honolulu, Hawaii. Osaka Castle. The Yakuza series is known for blending its serious storytelling with very goofy or over-the-top situations. And one of the most infamous examples of this in early Yakuza games is Osaka Castle from Yakuza 2. For those that haven't played my favorite Yakuza game, or for those who have forgotten about it, let me remind you about how utterly insane Osaka Castle is. So Osaka Castle is a real-life castle in Japan, located in, well, Osaka. But in the world of Yakuza, the Omi Alliance family, the Sengoku family, have built a giant golden replica of the castle underneath it. And the replica Osaka Castle can literally emerge from the ground within the original, like the original castle folds away to reveal it as it rises up. It's never explained in-game how they did this. How did they build this giant underground castle underneath one of the most famous castles in Japan? The best part is, this castle isn't even brought up in future games. There's an entire Yakuza castle built underneath a real castle that can also rise up and replace the real castle whenever the Sengoku family wants. Kiryu also beats up 2 tigers within the castle, which is pretty insane. And for some reason, the Sengoku family also decided to restore multiple American Civil War-era Gatling guns to use as defense within the castle, instead of modern-day weapons. Funny enough, in the original Yakuza 2, these were Browning machine guns, but in the remake, which I'm presuming is the canon version of the story, they were replaced with Gatling guns. What an utterly insane location. I love this series. Ghosts. While the Yakuza series is primarily a crime thriller, that doesn't mean supernatural elements don't occasionally appear in the series. In fact, ghosts have appeared in a surprising amount of Yakuza games. In Yakuza 2, there's a sub-story called Rising from the Shadows, in which Kiryu is given a cursed VHS tape, much like the tape from The Ring. Upon watching it, he sees a spooky lady and is told that he's been cursed, or possessed. Eventually, Kiryu will see this ghostly woman, and she'll lead him into an ambush by the very same people who gave Kiryu the tape in the first place. The people who gave Kiryu the tape were trying to scam him into paying for an exorcism. During the encounter, Kiryu says that they were clever in having a woman pretend to be the ghost. But the scam artists have no idea what he's talking about, which of course means that this ghost woman was real. This sub-story was changed a bit in the remake, and this version of the sub-story actually scared the crap out of me when I played the game. The sub-story begins the same way, but the guy who gives Kiryu the tape isn't a scam artist this time around. This ghostly woman is a lot more threatening, as she actually attempts to attack Kiryu, but by the end of the story, luckily, Kiryu drops the VHS tape, causing it to break, and this defeats the ghost. Ghosts didn't return in the series until Yakuza 5, in the sub-story The Cursed Prince Circle. In this story, Akiyama overhears some girls talking about how there's a cursed photo booth in the arcade. Curious, Akiyama tries it out, and sure enough, he sees a ghost in the photograph. And just as he looks at the photo, uh-oh, the ghost is behind him. Only the ghost runs away from Akiyama, which means that he's not actually a ghost. When Akiyama catches him, he discovers the truth. Turns out, this dude was just pranking people. Akiyama then confronts the teens that he heard the story from, and tells them the truth about the prank. only for the girls to reveal that the dude in the photo died 3 years ago after a prank went wrong, and he was chased into the street, where he was hit by a car. So this prankster was actually a ghost. The next ghost appears in Yakuza 0, where you can meet one during the videotape substory. In this substory, Majima is told a spooky story about a cursed videotape, and shortly afterwards, he can find a woman freezing to death in an alleyway. She begs for someone to bring her some food to warm her up. So Majima does this, and she's instantly just like, "I'm good," and then hands Majima a videotape that just so happens to be the cursed videotape, and then she vanishes. Majima then returns to the adult video store. Oh right, that's where he heard the story to begin with. And he and the store's clerk decide to watch it together, but the tape just shows static, with a woman saying that she's cold. The two of them then leave, but just as the story ends, the camera shows the tape restarting, and the woman from the alleyway is shown smiling at the camera, saying that she's no longer cold. I'm glad I missed this sub-story because the ending would have scared the crap out of me. Then, in Yakuza 6, you can find photographs of various dead characters from throughout the series, including Nishiki, Kashiwagi, Ihara, Shinji, Kazuma, Dojima, Yumi, and Tokugawa. Upon finding these photos, their ghosts will briefly appear. Though this little ghostly encounter in Yakuza 6 hits a bit of a speed bump, as one of the ghosts is the ghost of Long, which at the time of the game's release made sense, but Yakuza 7 and 8 reveal that Long actually survived being shot in the head. So maybe these weren't actually ghosts, but just visions caused by Kiryu's survivor's guilt. The final ghost, as of right now, is in the sub-story Forget Me Not in Yakuza 7. This sub-story follows Ichiban as he meets a woman named Kaede, who wants to do stuff on her bucket list, so he helps her. The two hang out until eventually she disappears, and Ichiban realizes that she was a ghost. Kaede was a woman who fell in love with him while she was in the hospital. It's never said why she was in the hospital, but whatever the reason was, she passed away from it. Yakuza 0 cameos. Being a prequel to the Yakuza series, characters from the previous games being in 0 just makes sense. But a lot of the returning characters are borderline cameos that players can pretty easily miss. For starters, there's Shinji from the original game. He appears in the sub-story A Shining Example, in which Kiryu saves him from the Jinsei family after Shinji declares war on all Yakuza members. Goda, the main antagonist of Yakuza 2, appears briefly in two sub-stories. The first is Rise of the Dragon, where he fights Majima because he's trying to steal Majima's pants. It's a whole thing. He does briefly interact with Kiryu, bumping into him in the sub-story The Cyanary Fortune Teller, but they don't fight. Then there's Daigo, who appears in the sub-story Heir to the Family, a sub-story that I actually missed in my playthrough of the game. In this sub-story, Daigo hangs out with Kiryu before being kidnapped, and Kiryu has to save him. Subhuman Filth Okita from Yakuza 5 also makes a cameo in Yakuza 0 during the sub-story Maharaja Showdown, where he has a disco duel with Kiryu. I also missed this one because I suck at the disco minigames, so I gave up trying to do it like a loser. Then there's Saigo, the mercenary dude who teaches Akiyama in Yakuza 4, and later appears in Yakuza 6. You don't actually interact with him, but he's one of the agents for Dragon and Tiger that you can send to get weapons. Finally, there's Komaka, who you can't actually miss, as the game forces you to interact with him as he teaches Majima thug-style combat. Live-action film. Released in March of 2007, Like a Dragon was the first ever live-action adaptation of the Yakuza series. Directed by Takashi Miike, the film is kinda an adaptation of the first game. It adapts the general story beats of the first game, but with some major changes. For example, Kiryu starts the film off as Haruka's adopted father. Nishiki is also in the film, but only for the final few minutes, where he shows up and challenges Kiryu to a fight. No joke, he's not in the rest of the film at all. Jingu is pretty much exclusively referred to as Mr. N. Kazuma also doesn't die in the film. There's also some new story elements added to the film, like some teenagers who rob convenience stores during a fight between Kiryu and the Yakuza. There's also a brand new character introduced in the story named Park Chul, who's a Korean hitman. The film is notable for not only being one of the very first live-action Yakuza projects, but also for being filmed on location. Pretty much the entire film was filmed in Kabukicho, and seeing as it was filmed around the same time as the original game is supposed to take place, the film really nails the look and vibe of the original game, despite some of the story changes being pretty weird. Oh yeah, and Toshihiro Nagoshi, the creator of the franchise, actually plays Jingu in the film, which is a pretty fun cameo. The film's reception at the time was very mixed, though as the years have gone on, the film has become a cult favorite in the Yakuza fanbase. As, while it's far from perfect, Goro Kishitani's portrayal as Majima, the action, the comedy, and the Easter eggs are looked at very positively by fans. I mean, there's literally a scene in the film where Kiryu drinks an energy drink to regain his health. That's kinda peak fiction right there. Kson. Kson is a pretty famous YouTuber and streamer who I'm a big fan of. She's known for quite a lot of things, such as her previous life as a dragon and her love for the Yakuza series. And she's actually since become a character in the series. Her character, Kei, appears in Yakuza Infinite Wealth and Majima Pirate Island, though she made her debut in the franchise in The Man Who Erased His Name, in which she actually appears in person, like live action. In Erased His Name, she's one of the hostesses at Club Heavenly, and, as mentioned, is played by her in live action. In Infinite Wealth and Majima of the Caribbean, she appears in Engine. It's revealed in these games that sometime after the events of Erased His Name, she moved to Hawaii, and now works at the Revolve Bar. Should also mention that Kei-san really likes Kiryu, and her character Kei is also a big fan of Kiryu. Now, how did she join the franchise? Well, it's simple. She won a contest called the Yakuza Gaiden Hostess Contest, which had its grand prize be appearing as a hostess in The Man Who Erased His Name and Yakuza 8. As to why she appeared in live action in Erased His Name, that's actually because they didn't have a lot of time between the contest and the release of the game. More on that situation later. So because of this time issue, Kei made her debut in live action. UFOs. While ghosts are the most common supernatural entity found in the Yakuza series, they're not the only spooky thing that can be encountered. For example, you could encounter alien life in 2 games. The first instance of alien activity comes from Yakuza 6. In the game's premium adventure mode, you can find a UFO finder piece of equipment at Ubiso Pawn. And by find, I of course mean buy. You buy it. Upon equipping it, you can then travel around looking for a UFO, and you can find this UFO floating by Millennium Tower. 2 more UFOs can be found in Onomichi. These are found right above the hotel and at Senkoji Temple. The second, and as of right now, last alien sighting in the series, comes from Lost Judgment. In the side case, the SRC's Hunt for the Truth, Yagami ends up investigating a supernatural research club at a local high school. One of the kids in the club claims that their dad was abducted by aliens, but in reality, his dad actually just abandoned him and his mom to go live with his mistress. The kid actually knows that this is the truth, but he doesn't want to admit it, because that means admitting that his father abandoned him, so the whole UFOs thing was just a coping mechanism. But Yagami can take photos of various UFOs, only for it to be revealed that none of these UFOs were real. They were just drones being piloted by the club's vice president. Case closed. Except not really, as just as the story ends, an actual UFO flies by. The Yakuza 4 Haruka scene. So there's a scene in Yakuza 4 that's probably the most controversial scene in the entire franchise. During the chapter Tiger and Dragon, Saejima has a very strange encounter with Haruka. After being saved by her, he wakes up and eventually falls onto Haruka. And then what follows is literally Saejima fighting the urge to R-word her, with the idea being that he's been in prison for so long that the first sight of a woman, he turns into a savage animal, all while Kiryu secretly watches. Thankfully, Saejima doesn't do anything, and he gets up, but this scene almost ruins Saijima's character for a lot of people. Because, look, I understand that there's a stereotype about former prisoners who have been in jail for a very long time being turned into sex-crazed maniacs upon being released, but making one of the protagonists be this stereotype is certainly a choice. Haruka's also 13 in Yakuza 4, so, Saijima's first instinct upon seeing a teenage girl is, to consider attacking her. Not a good look. But what's even weirder is that Kiryu was watching the whole thing. I get the reason for this is that Kiryu is like testing Saejima. If he tried anything, Kiryu would have obviously stepped in and honestly probably break his no-kill rule. But it's still such a strange scene. It's made even stranger because nothing like this ever happens again in-game. There's never a scene where Saejima experiences this need to bang somebody ever again in Yakuza 4. So why have this in the game? I've seen the argument that this scene was included to make the player debate whether or not Saejima is a good person, as by this point in the game, we're still meant to believe that he killed 18 people and that he's friends with an antagonist from the third game. But if that's the case, and I honestly think that is the case, I still don't think this was a very good call, because we think that he's killed 18 people and is friends with the dude who stabbed Kiryu from Yakuza 3. We're already questioning whether or not this dude's a good person. We don't need to see him debate on R-wording somebody. If Yakuza 4 ever gets a remake, which I don't think it needs one by the way, I could see this scene being removed. Lee is alive. So Lee's a supporting character in Yakuza 0. He's a pretty cool character who doesn't exactly make it out of the game okay. That was until Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which, for some reason, reveals that Lee survived the car bombing, but he doesn't return in the story in any major way. He just has somebody tell Majima that he's still alive, and that's it. As far as we know, Makoto probably still thinks that Lee is dead. This retcon was very controversial when the director's cut dropped, simply because there's no reason for it. Sure, Lee's a good character, but he died. His story's over. If they revealed that he was alive and he had like a sub-story or two about him, then at least he'd be given something to do. But it just seems like they brought him back for no good reason. The only thing that I can think of is that this is setting up his return in a future game. It would be really weird to see Lee again in Yakuza 9 or whatever, but I guess it's possible now. Lee isn't even the only character retconned into being alive again via the director's cut. The detective who gets shot in the back is revealed to have survived, and the Toko credit president from the very beginning of the game who got an off-screen death was also revealed to have survived. Not many people care about those retcons though, because they're just insanely minor characters. And honestly, the detective surviving just makes sense. Whereas Lee was killed by a car bomb while in said car. Yeah, there are some other absolutely insane retcon survivals, but this one just seems kinda random. That is, of course, unless he comes back in a future game, which, I don't know, maybe he will. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. In November 2025, shocking pretty much everyone, Ichiban from Yakuza was released as a DLC character for the racing game Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. Luckily, he was free DLC, and he even came with his own dragon-themed car. It's a pretty cool looking car, but it'd be cooler if the car he drove was a pocket racer car. And when playing as him, whenever you win a race or when you win a Grand Prix, music from the Yakuza series will play. And that's kinda it. There's not really much to say about this crossover, as outside of Hatsune Miku, none of the guest characters in Cross Worlds are voiced. Even the SpongeBob and Minecraft characters, and they got their own tracks. It's pretty lame, but at the same time, it is pretty funny seeing Ichiban race with Sonic, Pac-Man, SpongeBob, and Minecraft Steve. Real adult models. The Yakuza series features various Hostess Club elements throughout the series. There's even literal strip shows featuring live-action actresses. While you'd probably not be surprised to learn that these live-action sections star real-life adult models, many of the hostesses in the series are also played by real adult models. For example, Shizuka Saito and Noa Mizutani in Yakuza 4, Yua Mikami and Shoko Takahashi in Yakuza 2, Hikaru Shiota and Irina Sakurai in Yakuza 6, Mana Sakura and Saki Hatsumi in Yakuza 0, and Rina Rukawa and Yui Hatano in the original Yakuza are all based on real-life adult models. Yui Hatano was even added into Yakuza 3's remaster, replacing a certain character that I'll talk about a bit later. Keep in mind though, just because a lot of the hostesses are based on real-life adult models, that doesn't mean that all of the hostesses are played by adult models. Some are completely fictional, while others are based on real people but not adult models. Now, as you'd expect, this element of these Yakuza games are pretty controversial, as many deem it to be inappropriate. Personally, I don't really understand the problem with having real adult models play fictional versions of themselves in the series. Like, the Yakuza series is already an insanely serious, goofy, and horny franchise. I don't really see the problem. Real-life wrestlers. While the use of real-life adult models has been a bit controversial for some, what nobody finds controversial is the fact that the Yakuza series features quite a few real-life wrestlers. Some just as actors, like Yoshiaka Fujiwara, who voices the florist, but most play fictional versions of themselves, and you can beat the crap out of them, like Toru Yano, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Satoshi Kojima, Kazuka Okada, Hiroyoshi Tenzan, and Tetsuyo Naito in Yakuza 6, and Genichiro Tenru, Tatsumi Fujinami, Keiji Muto, Masahiro Chono, and Riki Choshu in Yakuza 2 Kiwami. While the Yakuza 6 wrestlers you actually fight, the ones from Yakuza 2 serve as the antagonists of the Majima construction storyline in the game, so you don't actually fight them, but instead fight their henchmen. There's also another real-life wrestler who appears in Yakuza 6, but you don't actually fight her. Instead, you can go out on a date with her. Sake Akai is one of the hostesses in the game, and she's a real-life wrestler. Her fictional version of herself she's playing even does wrestling as a side gig. But probably the most interesting real-life wrestler in the series is Yazuki Eikawa. She appears in the original Yakuza game, not the remake, the actual original Yakuza. She appears as a hostess, and at the time of the game's release, she was just an idol. But a few years after the release of the game, she actually made the leap to wrestling, and became the first Wonder of Stardom champion in 2011. So while she wasn't a wrestler at the time of her appearance in the first game, I thought she was still worth mentioning. How canon are the sub-stories? As mentioned before, the Yakuza series is well known for being pretty serious half of the time, while the other half...
頼んだぜ。俺のクールストライカー。やめろ。
どうや、楽しんどるか。
While not all of the goofy stuff comes from the sub-stories, most of it does, and this has led to a debate within the fandom about whether or not the sub-stories can be considered canon, not only because of how goofy they are, but also how likely is it that during the events of Yakuza 1, Kiryu stops investigating for a bit and spends 16 hours grinding out pocket circuit races? How likely is it that during the events of Yakuza 5, Saejima dresses up like Santa Claus and is chased down by a bunch of kids while he's hiding from the police? How likely is it that during the events of Yakuza 0, Majima infiltrates a cult in order to rescue a woman while he's supposed to be protecting Makoto? How likely is it that, well, okay, you get it. So, what's the answer? Are these sub-stories canon? Well, yeah. There really isn't anything confirming them to be non-canon. In fact, some sub-stories even continue in multiple games, or are mentioned as of happening in previous games. Yeah, Kiryu helping out a clone of Michael Jackson film a bootleg version of Thriller, and Akiyama helping an idol get every single question wrong during a game show are a bit weird, but that's part of the charm of the Yakuza games. They can be super serious and super goofy at a moment's notice. So yeah, these sub-stories do all happen. The only sub-stories that can be considered non-canon are the original versions of Yakuza 1, 2, and 3's sub-stories, as their updated versions for the remakes are most likely the canon version of these events. And yes, this means that the Doc Brown VR fighting simulation stuff is canon, because why not? Yakuza 1 English dub. A lot of people believe that Judgment was the very first installment in the Yakuza series to have an English dub, but that's not true, not even close. In fact, the original Yakuza game for the PlayStation 2 got an English dub all the way back in 2006, and it happened, it exists. The dub was heavily criticized at the time for its constant swearing, weird line deliveries, and bizarre name changes. For example, Makoto Date was turned into Mako Dante, Shintaro Kazuma became Shintaro Fuma, and Akira Nishikiyama was turned into Akira Nishiki. Yes, Nishiki was now his actual name. I wish I could show you some of the clips of the massive amount of swearing in the game, but I don't want this video to be age restricted, so I'll just give you the meme line.
10 years in the joint made you a...
Because of how poorly received the dub was, no English dubs of the series would be made until 2018. Not only that, but the original game didn't sell very well outside of Japan, nor did Yakuza 2, 3, 4, or Dead Souls. So Yakuza 5 wasn't even released worldwide at first. In fact, the entire franchise would have never been released outside of Japan ever again if it wasn't for Yakuza 0 selling really well outside of Japan, which led to Yakuza 5 getting released worldwide in 2015, and every game since getting a worldwide release as well. So Yakuza 0 basically saved the franchise in the West. Anyways, the craziest thing about this dub is the fact that Majima is voiced by Mark Hamill. He was probably chosen because of his experience voicing the Joker, since Majima and the Joker are both kinda goofy creatures. It's kinda sad but funny. Mark Hamill doesn't actually remember doing this dub at all, which, I mean, I get. It was a one-off gig years ago, but damn, poor Majima. Shout out to the dude who gaslit Mark Hamill into thinking that Majima was from a Disney film.
Only I get the privilege of killing him.
Majima.
Oyabun. Oh no.
Are Like a Dragon Kenzin and Like a Dragon Ishin canon? Like a Dragon Kenzin and Like a Dragon Ishin are spin-off games released in March of 2008 and February of 2014. These games are very different from the mainline Yakuza games, as while the characters are designed off of characters from the original series, some of which even share similar names, they take place hundreds of years prior to the Yakuza series. Kenzin takes place in 1605, and Ishin takes place in the 1860s. Both games focus on real-life historical figures, who just so happen to look and sound like characters from the Yakuza series. Think of these games as like those special Family Guy episodes where they retell the story using characters from the show. Despite looking very different from other Yakuza games, these games actually play fairly similar to the mainline games, but of course have their own little unique twists, such as a heavy focus on weapons, like swords, knives, and pistols. So let's now answer the question, are these games canon to the rest of the series? Well, yes actually. You might not think so at first, since everyone is basically being played by a Yakuza character, but the in-universe explanation for this is that the characters that we see in the Yakuza series are descendants from these characters in Kenzin and Ishin. Well, okay, that's not actually true, that's just a fan theory. But we know that these games are considered canon, as series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi said in an interview in 2014 that both games take place in the same universe as the Yakuza games. You can even see a character from Ishin as a ghost in Yakuza 6. Though there is a bit of a goof in Yakuza 7, as you can actually see an in-universe film trailer for a movie that uses footage from Kenzin. This has led some to believe that Kenzin has been retconned into being an in-universe film. Which, sure, that could be true, though at the same time, you can also argue that this film is just a retelling of the events of Kenzin. But yeah, it seems very likely that these games are still considered canon. Like a Dragon Online. Like a Dragon Online is a spin-off game centered around collecting virtual cards that was released for iOS, Android, and PC in November of 2018. In order to get the cards, you had to spend either real-life money to buy in-game currency or grind a ton for in-game currency to use this fake currency in the game's gacha system. As for the game's story, the game is an alternate version of Yakuza 7's plot, following generally the same story, but with some changes here and there. There's also a side story in the game that adapts the events of the original Yakuza game. Gameplay-wise, this game isn't all that interesting. It's your standard gacha collectible card game. Now, is this game canon? No? The actual main story of the game is obviously not canon, but lore about the characters mentioned in the game that doesn't conflict with info found in the mainline series has been confirmed to be at least somewhat canon. For example, there's sub-story-like mini-stories that take place in between games, such as a story about how Mine joined Tojo Kai. There's a story about Daigo set in 2001. There's a story about Rikia during the time skip in Yakuza 3. And there's a story following Goda in 1999, after he was expelled from the Omi Alliance. The game features a ton of characters from throughout the series, including many characters who we haven't seen in years. For example, Tanimura's in the game, and he even works with Nishiki to solve a crime. Unfortunately, I believe that this game has been shut down. Information about this game's lifespan is weirdly hard to come by, at least on the English side of the internet. If you're curious as to why it never received a release outside of Japan, well, it was going to at one point. Early in development, that was the plan, but these plans were cancelled due to the game's developers believing that audiences outside of Japan would reject the gacha mechanics found in the game. Last thing that I'll mention is that the game actually had several collabs with anime and manga franchises, such as Psycho Pass, Baki, Golden Kamui, and Tokyo Revengers. Product placements. The Yakuza series is no stranger to product placements, and I'm not talking about Yakuza being advertised on products in real life, though those do exist. I'm talking about items in the game themselves being product placements. Now, for someone living outside of Japan like myself, a lot of these product placements go over your head. For example, there's Orion Beer, which can be found in Judgment, and you can see advertisements of it in Yakuza 3. It's an extremely popular beer in Okinawa in real life. Many of the restaurants in the series are also based on real-life restaurants you can visit, such as Matsuya in Yakuza 1 through 4, Fuji Soba in Yakuza 0, Sam's Maui in Yakuza 3, Ringer Hut in Yakuza 0, Gyu Kaku in Judgment, and Watami Izakaya in Yakuza 4. But there's also various pieces of product placement that you would probably recognize as well, such as Pepsi, 7-Up, Gatorade, Red Bull, and Mountain Dew being buyable in several games. There's also ads for Uber Eats, Axe deodorant, and a Jack Daniels whiskey, and in the case of Axe and Jack Daniels, you can actually buy them. Though you could only buy Axe deodorant in the original Yakuza 3, its remaster and remake doesn't have it. There's also a Hatsune Miku DLC skin for Haruka in Yakuza 5. You can even see an ice sculpture of Hatsune Miku in the base game. Of course, there's also Club Sega in the series, which features various Sega arcade games and advertisements for Sega products and games that were released around the time of the game's release. My two favorite pieces of product placement are, first, Ace Cook. This is a real-life ramen noodle company that actually plays a role in the sub-story Instant Ramen Takes Time in Yakuza 3, in which you can help out an Ace Cook employee create the perfect cup noodle. And then there's Pizza La. This is a Japanese pizza company that is the star of probably my favorite sub-story in the entire franchise, Passport to Pizza. Allow me to explain the sub-story to you real quick. So in Yakuza 0, Kiryu finds a foreign woman that he doesn't understand very well, asking for help. He believes that she's asking for pizza, when in reality she's asking for her visa. So Kiryu goes to Pizza La and buys a pizza for her. You then have to slowly make your way back to her without dropping the pizza or letting it get cold. When you get to her, she tells you that she actually wanted her visa, and that's when her pimp shows up and fights Kiryu for thinking that he's trying to steal her away from him. After Kiryu beats him up, the pimp tells the woman that he loves her and that he wants to marry her. She says yes, and the three of them begin eating the pizza that Kiryu bought. Kiryu then eats an entire slice of pizza in a single, agonizing bite. And just as the story is ending, the camera pans over to the Pizza La worker who sold Kiryu the pizza, watching the three of them eating the entire pizza in a dark alleyway. He then proceeds to fist bump the air, happy for the three of them. I'm sorry I had to explain it, but this ending actually had me dying of laughter when I played the game for the first time. Amazon series. Releasing for a few days in October of 2024, Like a Dragon Yakuza is the second major attempt at adapting Yakuza for live action. And like the film, the show adapts the original game. Except, not really. Outside of the very basic plot of the original game, almost everything is different. You might be like, oh, well, it can't be that different. Well, let me give you a few examples of just how different the show is. Yumi is way more active in the plot. Nishi's sister is now a prominent character. Goda and Saijima are characters in the series. Majima has both of his eyes at the start of the show, but loses one of them after he fails to complete a hit. Kazuma is an ex-Yakuza member. Kiryu and Nishiki become Yakuza after robbing an arcade to get the attention of the Dojima family. Nishiki is dressing up as a demon murdering people. Yumi, Nishiki, and Kazuma all survive the events of the story. Majima's barely in the series. The show keeps going back and forth between two different periods of time, 1995 and 2005. Yumi and her sister, who actually exists in this version of the story, watched their mother drown herself when they were kids. Haruka and Kiryu barely interact at all. Yumi is Haruka's aunt, not her mom. Date and Kiryu meet each other when Kiryu's in jail. Long isn't in the show at all. Nishiki kills Dojima because Dojima let Nishiki's sister die, which means, yes, she dies pre-time skip. And Kiryu wants to become the dragon of Dojima. No, like, he flat out says this. Originally intended to be a film, it was reworked into being a 6-episode series for Amazon Prime. And the series seemed to be doomed from the very start, as it seems that this was another case of filmmakers or showmakers, or whatever, not caring about the video game source material, as the actors were discouraged from playing the games by the producers, and the show was written with the intention of it being a gritty crime thriller with no goofy elements at all. Reception to the show was mixed. Most fans of the franchise weren't all that happy with it, but there was some stuff that people enjoyed, such as the performances and a few of the story changes. As for non-fans, the show was deemed by many to just be whatever. Not bad, not good, just a whatever run-of-the-mill crime thriller. I personally haven't seen it, so I can't say whether or not I think it's good or bad, but it definitely sounds pretty different from the game it's supposedly adapting. The other Amazon series. So this is the last entry I'm recording because it literally is about to come out. I knew that this show was in development, but I had no idea that it was releasing so soon. After the mixed reception to 2024's Like a Dragon Yakuza, RGG Studio greenlit yet another Yakuza 1 live-action adaptation. This adaptation is a bit strange though, because it's actually a collab of sorts. The show was produced so quickly after its September 2025 announcement because it reuses actors and sets from the film series Nihon Toitsu. This is a direct-to-DVD film series about Yakuza and other criminals in Japan. There are currently, and I'm not joking, 95 films and 3 shows in this franchise. And the series began in 2013. In 13 years, there's been 95 films and 3 shows. How the hell did they do this? Well, I ask how, but they're pretty cheaply made. Not saying these films are bad, I have literally never watched a single one of them, but they are on the cheaper side. So anyways, this 3-episode series adapts the first game in the series, and has Kiryu and Majima being played by major actors from the films. But the most interesting thing about the show is the fact that Nishiki is played by his voice actor from the games. In fact, most of the major cast actually has experience with the franchise. Yasukaze Motamiya, who plays Kiryu, played Shishido in Erased His Name, and Yoshiyuki Yamaguchi, who played Majima, played Yuki in the same game. Even Date's actor, Kenji Masuda, was in a Yakuza project. He played Jason Rich in Yakuza on Majima Tides. Anyways, I'm recording this before the show comes out, so I don't know how it was received, or how different from the game it is. But what I do know is that the show is supposedly going to tie in with Kiwami 3. Hopefully this show's good, but I don't have high hopes.
落ちちゃった。みんな始めてる。行くぜ100万台。プレイステーション。
What happened to Kaoru Sayama? Kaoru Sayama is a main character in Yakuza 2 and a love interest for Kiryu. However, after her major role in Yakuza 2, she was quickly written out of the series, only making a very brief cameo in the beginning of Yakuza 3, before returning in Yakuza 8 as a minor character over a decade later. So, what happened to her between games? Well, we know that she left to America as part of a trading program, and during the events of Yakuza 3, you can see in her character profile that she's moved on from Kiryu and is dating a cop in America. Then, in 2009, she returned to Japan, but never interacts with Kiryu ever again. She's not mentioned at all until Yakuza 8, where it's revealed that she works in the juvenile division in the Osaka police. She's since broken things off with the American cop, and hasn't gotten married due to her commitment to her job. So honestly, nothing all that special happened to her. But what about what happened to her in real life? What I mean is, why was she written out of the series? After all, it seems like she was a perfect fit for Kiryu. And the answer to this, in my opinion, is very stupid. There's been 3 different explanations given over the years, and by given, I mean fans have speculated about. The devs and writers of the franchise have never actually given a proper reason. The first is that there are rumors that Sayama's original voice actress, Yu Daiki, was very difficult to work with. And since Japanese companies like to keep the same voice actor for a character unless they absolutely have to recast, they wrote the character out of the series. There isn't much evidence for this claim though, outside of Sayama being given a new voice actor for Yakuza 2's remake. The second explanation is that longtime series writer Masayoshi Yokoyama doesn't want Kiryu to date anyone. You see, the original 2 Yakuza games had their stories supervised by Heize Saishu, and starting with Yakuza 3, Yokoyama took over. And starting in Yakuza 3, Kiryu just refuses any advancements made on him, and he doesn't ever try and seriously date people. And finally, there's the fact that Kiryu can go on dates at hostess clubs. If Sayama was still in the series and in a relationship with Kiryu, it'd be pretty out of character for Kiryu to cheat on her like that, so they would have to remove this part of the game whenever you play as Kiryu. Personally, I think Yokoyama wanting Kiryu to be a forever bachelor is probably the reason why she was written out of the series. But hey, she returned in Yakuza 8, and I guess technically Yakuza 3's remake as well, so I guess she's not completely gone anymore. Why Kiryu can't be in Tekken? I don't know much about Tekken outside of the Clement J64 video about it, but what I do know is that if there's a character who just makes perfect sense to cross over into that series, it's gotta be Kiryu. And I'm not alone in thinking that. Kiryu is often regarded as one of the most highly requested guest characters in the Tekken series. But the thing about Kiryu is that he can't actually guest star in a Tekken game, or any fighting game for that matter, and it's for a weird reason. Series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi has publicly stated that he doesn't want Kiryu in any fighting game crossover for the sole reason that he doesn't want to see Kiryu hit women. That Kiryu's moral code is so strong that he would never hit a woman. And the thing is, I kinda get what he's saying. I could never see Kiryu ever hitting a woman in the series. But at the same time, it's a fighting game. Like, I don't think that Solid Snake, Bayonetta, or Ryu would beat the crap out of children, but you can do that in Super Smash Bros. Now, with that being said, I do think it would be weird seeing Kiryu fighting women in Tekken, but like I said, it's a fighting game, it's not serious. Now, while Nagoshi isn't in control of the series anymore, his replacement, Masayoshi Yokoyama, has said similar things, saying that he would rather the Yakuza series make the leap to TV and film, rather than crossing over into other video games. I guess he changed his mind when it came to Sonic. Majima ended the bubble economy. So here's a weird lore bit revealed in a Yakuza 0 substory. So the Japanese bubble economy refers to an economic bubble that occurred in Japan from 1986 to 1991. It's actually a major inspiration for Yakuza 0's storyline and gameplay. That's why you can get so much money so quickly in Yakuza 0, but in 1992 the bubble economy ended, and Japan had a bit of an economic crisis in the 90s. I'm no expert in the subject by any means, so I would recommend looking into it yourself. Anyways, in the Yakuza 0 sub-story, A Taxing Issue, Majima is asked by a man to help him figure out what tax percentage he should be pushing for, and Majima can help him. Now, this sub-story is a direct nod to a 3% consumption tax introduced in April of 1989, which played a fairly sized role in the collapse of the bubble economy. At least, I believe that's what happened. I'm no economist or Japanese historian. So, Japan's financial crisis in the 90s, known as the Lost Decade, was caused by Majima in the Yakuza universe. Yakuza Dead Souls. Released in June 2011 for Japan and March 2012 for the rest of the world, Yakuza Dead Souls was probably the strangest Yakuza game released up until Majima Treasure Island, which is only weirder because that game is actually canon. But yes, Dead Souls is a non-canon spin-off game taking place shortly after the events of Yakuza 4, and focuses on Kiryu, Majima, Akiyama, and Goda of all characters trying to contain a zombie outbreak and find the source of it, so that they can stop it. The plot has the four of them eventually meeting up and battling Omi officer Nikaido, who is the culprit behind the outbreak, as he wanted to get revenge on Kamurocho for Goda's defeat in Yakuza 2, so he worked with an arms dealer named Didi to smuggle in his bioweapon into the city and activate it, creating the outbreak, and mutating a bunch of people into non-zombie monsters as well. The game ends with the team defeating Nikaido and Didi, and the outbreak is stopped. Now, obviously, the game is notable for being very different from your standard Yakuza game. For starters, zombies. But more interestingly is the fact that the game primarily focuses on gun combat. Yeah, this is a third-person shooter featuring assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, sniper rifles, submachine guns, grenade launchers, and a multitude of different miniguns. There's even a weapon that calls in a satellite-fired laser strike, which is a very obvious nod to the Hammer of Dawn from the Gears of War franchise. The game is also the first Yakuza game to feature controllable partners that you can bring into combat with you. And by controllable, I mean controllable in that you command them to do things. You don't, actually play as them. They can be ordered to stay by your side and protect you, go look for zombies to kill, or attack a specific group of undead. While two of these partners are original characters created for the game, the rest of the characters are actually from previous games, like Date, Arasa, and funny enough, Bob. Yeah, the clown that you can trade the worst abbreviation possible for completion points with is a partner, though sadly only in the game's last adventure mode. You can't actually have him in the normal game. Dead Souls received pretty poor reviews. While most people quite like the game's story and characters for just how crazy everything is, the gameplay is what kills the game for so many. Thankfully, Dead Souls was released worldwide, so everyone can at the very least try this very silly spin-off game. Oh, never mind, actually, this game's extremely expensive now. Cool, love to see it. Time travel is real. In Yakuza 6, there's a sub-story called The Girl Who Leapt Through Time? The story sees Kiryu meeting a girl who claims to have sent her consciousness back in time 1 year. Turns out that she got these time-traveling abilities after praying really hard in order to go back in time and to stop herself from insulting her dad. Turns out, her dad is a bit of a pushover, so his wife began cheating on him, and he knew about this, but he didn't say anything. And eventually, the girl, Miku, insulted him, which caused him to break down and cry. So now that she has the ability to travel through time, she just started doing it for the fun of it. But upon meeting Kiryu for the second time, she reveals that she's lost the ability. But it's then she realizes that her dad didn't always used to be a pushover. It wasn't until an incident where he was mugged that he started being a pushover, so Kiryu stops this mugging from happening, and the future is changed. He's no longer a pushover, and his wife isn't cheating on him anymore. Now, this sub-story is a very direct nod to the novel The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, which may lead you to think that this sub-story is non-canon. But as mentioned before, sub-stories in the Yakuza series can get pretty crazy, and there's nothing saying that they're non-canon. So this sub-story means that time travel is a very real thing in the Yakuza series. What happened to Tatsu Shinada? Shinada is a fan-favorite character who serves as one of the protagonists of Yakuza 5. Because of how beloved the character is, you'd expect that he'd be a reoccurring character, but no, he's not. He's not in any game after Yakuza 5, outside of Like a Dragon Online. So what happened to Shinada after the events of Yakuza 5? Which games was he mentioned in? Well, that's the funny thing. Unlike Sayama and Takemura, who were at least mentioned in future games occasionally, Shinada hasn't been mentioned at all. The closest thing to a mention of the character is S-kun. In Yakuza 8, there's a radio station that you can listen to called After 6 Junction, and in one of the broadcasts, they mention a character just called S-kun, who is mentioned having used a mountain of debt to buy a baseball bat, and then paid back all of the debt using said bat to win prizes at the local batting center. However, it's not confirmed if this is meant to be Shinada, but it could be, and if it is, that means that Shinada's life seemingly didn't improve all that much from after the events of Yakuza 5. So why hasn't Shinada appeared again? Well, there's probably two different reasons. The first is that, while he's a fan-favorite character nowadays, when the game first released, Shinada wasn't very popular. In fact, in popularity polls conducted shortly after the release of the game, Shinada wasn't even on them. And the second reason, to be honest with you, is probably because he's not needed. I really like him, but at the end of the day, he has very few connections to any of the other main characters in the series. I could see him returning for a sub-story similar to how Yuya appeared in Yakuza 5, but that's about it. Still, I hope he gets to make another appearance one day. Shin Seicho. In Yakuza 2 Kiwami, there are two different cities that you can explore. This is a bit weird, because the game that it's a remake of, Yakuza 2, features 3 different cities to explore. This third city, Shin Seicho, was cut from the remake. This is despite the city featuring multiple sub-stories, and the ability to explore the real-life tower, the Suten Kaku Tower. This removal wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that this city doesn't appear in any other game. The only way to explore it is in the original PlayStation 2 Yakuza 2, so why was this city cut from the remake? Some have claimed it was due to budget concerns and lack of manpower, as this game was being developed at the very same time as Yakuza 6, while others claim it was cut because it wasn't very important. For example, this is the map of the city. It's literally just one single street with a side street and the tower. While there were sub-stories here, there weren't that many, and they were pretty easily transferred over to the other 2 cities in the game for the remake. And the only time that you're actually required to go to this city is in Chapter 11. Honestly, the reason for its removal is probably a combination of all of these factors. Why spend time remaking a non-important city that'll never be returned to in the series when you can just cut it and move all of its story bits into the other 2 far more important maps that can later be reused for future games? I mean, this is the same studio that lets you explore Morning Glory Orphanage in Yakuza 4 for a tiny bit, but then never lets you return there, despite the fact that there's no reason why they couldn't just give you the option to come back here post-game. You think they're gonna remake an entire city for a single chapter? No. Streets of Kamurocho. As a way to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Sega, a series of free bite-sized games were released on Steam. For a limited time. Yeah, for some reason it was decided that you could only get these games for a few days, back in October of 2020. If you missed these days, you can never play any of these games. Very lame. One of these games was Streets of Kamurocho. This is essentially a tiny Streets of Rage game, loosely adapting the plot of the original Yakuza, with Seiryu and Majima both available as playable characters. Now, none of the characters in the game, both playable and non-playable, are all that original. Every character features a moveset heavily inspired, if not downright copied, from characters found in the Streets of Rage series. The game features only a single level, but has 3 different boss fights, these being Nishiki, Long, and Shindo. Upon beating the game, you're actually given a bonus character, that being Ichiban, even though in-universe, Bro's supposed to be in jail during the time of the original game. But this is a fun, goofy spin-off game, so continuity doesn't matter. What also doesn't matter is Sega's stupid you can only get these games for a few days thing. Because I lied. While that was the intention, there are workarounds to be able to get not just Streets of Kamurocho, but all of the 60th anniversary games. If you go into Steam's help menu and click on Games, you can then search up the names of the 60th anniversary games. Upon clicking on them, you'll be given the option, "It's not in my library." If you click on it and then click Install, you'll be given the game forever, bypassing Sega's dumb decision. Though this method may not work forever, as some free but delisted games are eventually removed even from this option, like the original release of FNAF World. So if you want to play this short and silly beat-em-up spin-off, I suggest downloading it as soon as possible. Saejima was supposed to die in Yakuza 4. Unfortunately, we don't know too much about this entry due to language barriers. But we do know that Saejima was originally going to be killed off in the original script for Yakuza 4. This was revealed in Yakuza 4 Successor of the Legend Complete Strategy Guide. Apparently, the decision to have him survive the events of the game was fairly late in development, or at least later than you'd expect. This, of course, leaves the question, when was he supposed to die? If I had to guess, his death would have been at the end of the game, when Katsuragi attempted to shoot him in the back. The developers probably changed this ending due to them wanting to keep using Saejima in future games. Granted, with the amount of survival retcons the series has made over the years, they probably would have just retconned Saejima's death eventually anyways. Jet Set Radio is canon. Released in June 2000 in Japan and October 2000 in America, Jet Set Radio is a cel-shaded rollerblade platformer about a gang of teens and young adults traveling around Tokyo defying the man by spraying graffiti. The game has since become a cult classic and has spawned several sequels. And by several sequels, I mean one. Well, 2 if you want to count the Game Boy Advance one. Anyways, you're not going to find any references to the Yakuza franchise in the series, as both main installments were released prior to the original Yakuza. But the 2 franchises would eventually meet in Yakuza Kiwami, released in January of 2016. In the game's sub-story, Crisis on the Crapper, Seiryu is recruited by a man who is stuck in a public bathroom with no toilet paper. Upon giving him a whole bunch of tissues, the man in the stall emerges and gives Seiryu his business card. His name is Goji Rakaku, a name that Yakuza fans aren't gonna recognize. But Jet Set Radio fans will, as he's the main antagonist of Jet Set Radio Future, the sequel to Jet Set Radio that takes place in a dystopian futuristic Tokyo. Not only is he in Yakuza Kiwami, but you can find several ATMs in the game that have the name Rakaku Bank written on them, which is his company in Jet Set Radio Future. So it seems like the world of the Yakuza series will eventually morph into the world of Jet Set Radio Future. Like a Dragon Prologue. Remember how I said the Like a Dragon film was the first ever live-action adaptation of Yakuza? I said adaptation for a reason, because it's not the first live-action Yakuza project. That would be the direct-to-video short film Like a Dragon Prologue. Released in March of 2006, the film, like its theatrical brother, was filmed on location. But unlike the full-length film, this short film serves as a prequel to the entire series. In fact, it's not even a prequel to the film. It's a prequel to the original game. The film follows Kiryu, Nishiki, Yumi, and Yuko as they live their lives through the 1970s to the mid-1990s. We see how Kiryu and Nishiki rose up the ranks, and how Yumi got a job at Serena. The short film ends with Yumi and Nishiki on their way to the hospital after Nishiki kills Dojima and Kiryu is arrested. Yumi eventually escapes the hospital and returns to the ruins of Sunflower Orphanage, setting up her story in the original game. As for the film's reception, it seems that people think it's pretty alright, with many people saying that the film nails the tone of the original game, and that Nishiki's actor, Mikio Osawa, does a really good job in the film, though the film's low budget is very noticeable at points. Now, is this film canon? Well, surprisingly, yeah. That was until the release of Yakuza Kiwami. In Like a Dragon Prologue, we see Kiryu giving Yumi her ring. But of course, in Kiwami, we now have a new version of this story, which makes this short film non-canon. What happened to the Ryudo family? In Yakuza 3, Kiryu briefly battles and later becomes friends with the Ryudo family, a small Yakuza family in Okinawa. The family serves as major characters throughout the events of the story, helping Kiryu take care of the orphanage, and protecting it from the Tamashiro family. While Rikiya dies in the game, its patriarch, Nakahara, and prominent member, Mikio, are still alive by the end of the game, and continue being friends with Kiryu, with Nakahara's foster daughter, Saki, even becoming friends with the kids from Morning Glory. When the game released, people expected these characters to return as minor characters or even supporting characters in future games. And did they? No, I mean, that's why I'm talking about them. To this day, none of the surviving members of the Ryudo family have shown up in a game. Now, it makes sense for them not to appear in games where Okinawa isn't visited, but why aren't they in Yakuza 4 and 6? Wouldn't you think that there would be a scene in Yakuza 4 where Kiryu at least mentions that Nakahara or Mikio is gonna watch over the kids at Morning Glory while he goes off to Kamurocho? Why doesn't Kiryu mention in Yakuza 5 that the Ryudo family is watching over Morning Glory while Kiryu does his taxi street racing job? And why isn't the Ryudo family in the epilogue of Yakuza 6? I'm not even saying that they have to have a role or talk, just have them appear as a cameo. For a while, people assumed that after the events of Yakuza 3, the family disbanded, which is why they aren't mentioned in 4 through 6. Though that still doesn't answer the question why Nakahara, Mikio, and Saki just never appear again. But regardless, this theory was disproven in Yakuza 8, as the Ryudo family is briefly mentioned as still existing. So where were they in Yakuza 4 through 6? We've never gotten an answer, but I think the answer is actually pretty simple. While we don't see Kiryu mentioning the family in these games, it can be safely assumed that he does call them to have them check up on the kids off-screen. Especially in Yakuza 5, since Kiryu is gone for a very long time in that game. Basically, the Ryudo family was still helping out the orphanage, but off-screen, as we barely spend any time in Okinawa in any game after Yakuza 3. Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise. Released in March of 2018 in Japan and October 2018 for the rest of the world, Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise is an action game made by RGG Studio about the manga and anime franchise Fist of the North Star. The game itself is very strange because it's essentially just a Yakuza game with a Fist of the North Star paint job, to the point where a good chunk of the game's cast are actually from the Yakuza games. Even to the point where heat actions are present. though admittedly they do act a little bit differently in this game. To make the Yakuza comparisons even more obvious, a free DLC was released that traded out Fist of the North Star's protagonist, Kenshiro, out for Kiryu. And since Kiryu's voice actor already voiced Kenshiro, this basically turned the game into Kiryu getting isekai'd into the world of Fist of the North Star. But it's not just Kiryu that got isekai'd. Komaka and Joe Amon show up in the game as themselves, and they're not DLC, they're flat out in the base game. The game also features a whole bunch of sub-stories and minigames, like baseball, and you can even play various Sega arcade games. Lost Paradise is literally just a Yakuza game that looks like Fist of the North Star. Because of this, many Yakuza fans consider this game to be an unofficial installment in the series. The Man Who Erased His Name was originally DLC. Remember how I said that the dev team behind The Man Who Erased His Name didn't have enough time to make an in-game model of Kson? Well, that wasn't exclusive to her. Every single hostess in that game was played in live action for the exact same reason. They just didn't have enough time to make in-game models. This was due to the fact that The Man Who Erased His Name had a very rushed development. During the development of Yakuza 8, there was a plan to do a flashback chapter of sorts in the game that would have given some context to what Kiryu was doing between the events of Yakuza 6 and Yakuza 7. But this was quickly scrapped, and it was decided that this flashback chapter would be an entire story DLC, the first ever for the Yakuza series. But eventually, during development, it was decided to completely change the scope of the game into a full-fledged game. But there was a bit of a problem. Yakuza 8 and the remake of Ishin were both being developed at the same time as Erased His Name. And because Erased His Name was easily the least important of the three games, it had far fewer devs working on the game than a usual Yakuza game. And since RGG Studio wanted the game to release before Yakuza 8, they had to work fast. And so the game's development cycle lasted roughly 6 months, which for a DLC makes sense, but for an entire game is a bit crazy. So yeah, the reason why the developers didn't have time to make in-game models of the hostesses, and the reason why the game is also easily the shortest mainline Yakuza game, is because it was originally intended to be DLC. Black Panther, Like a New Dragon, New Chapter. Black Panther, Like a Dragon, New Chapter is a spin-off Yakuza game that's very beloved, but is easily the least played out of all of the games in the series. And that's because it was never released outside of Japan, and it was only released on the PSP. The game follows a man named Tatsuya Yukio, who accidentally kills a Tojo clan member, which leads to him being captured and sent to an underground fighting arena to fight for his freedom by winning 10 consecutive matches. But it turns out that the Tojo clan member that he killed wasn't actually killed by him. While he did beat him close to death, the Tojo clan member, Toda, survived and was sent into hiding so that they could frame Yukio for the murder, only for Toda to eventually be killed while in hiding in order to further cover up the truth. There's some other wacky plot stuff in the game, like how Yukio's father is actually a doctor in the fighting arena who was originally a fighter in the arena, but went into hiding because he believed that someone was trying to murder him. So he changed his name and began hiding in plain sight as the arena's standby doctor. Yukio also fights a ton of different foes in the game, which allows him to learn a whole bunch of different fighting styles, including boxing, MMA, sumo wrestling, and even lucha libre. Gameplay-wise, Black Panther is similar to the mainline games, as you could explore Kamurocho, hang out with the hostesses, play minigames, and do sub-stories. But when it comes to combat, the game differs quite a bit, because the game has you fighting enemies one-on-one, instead of like 1-on-10. You also run the risk of having your body parts injured during fights, which require you to use healing items in order to recover. And the game doesn't actually have life bars during combat. You have to pause the game to see your own life bar, but as for your opponents, you never actually see them. You have to rely on their body language and moves to know how much health they have left. The game also features an online multiplayer mode. Yeah, this is the first Yakuza game with an online multiplayer mode. While this game has never been officially translated, there have been fan translations, and people seem to really like it. And it seems like it sold well, as it received a sequel in March of 2012 that was also a Japanese PSP exclusive. This game actually has you working with the arena, which I just realized I haven't said the name of. The underground fighting ring is called Dragon Heat. Anyways, Yukio and a bunch of other fighters have to team up to save Dragon Heat from being replaced with another competing fighting arena called Asura. While a lot of the features from the first game returned in the sequel, the online multiplayer mode didn't. But you know what did return in this game? Two different characters, Akiyama and the Florist. Well, they don't just appear in this game, they appear in both installments, and are the only mainline Yakuza characters to appear in these games. Despite a massive amount of fans wanting these games to be officially translated, or even remade, RGG Studio has no interest in doing so, as it was stated in January of 2023 that the studio wants to look to the future instead of remaking older games. I guess they changed their minds when it came to Kiwami 3 and Zero Director's Cut, and to the next-gen updates to Kiwami 1 and 2. I think they just don't want to remake these games. Yakuza 3's cut content for the West. When Yakuza 3 was released worldwide, a decent amount of content was cut from the game for multiple reasons, ranging from censorship to wanting to be more American and European friendly. For example, Mahjong and Shogi were completely removed from Yakuza 3. You just couldn't play them. This is because these games aren't very common in Europe and the United States, so it was decided to just remove them to appeal to Western gamers. In regards to censorship, while the hostesses are still in the game, a bunch of the gameplay around them was cut, including managing the club, customizing their outfits, and going on dates with the hostesses. In fact, a hostess was removed entirely, that being Rina Ayakawa. I have no idea why she was cut from the game. The massage parlor was also cut from the game, which meant that all of the moves that you learned from the parlor just weren't in the Western release of the game. A bunch of sub-stories were also cut from the game, including Manga Artist Debut, I Wanna Go to Tokyo, Love's Cupid, The Brewer's Treasure, and most notably, Talking About Me. A total of 22 sub-stories were removed from the game. Almost all of this content was restored in Yakuza 3's remaster a few years later. Keyword is almost. Two major things weren't included. The first is Rina Ayakawa, though almost every hostess in the original Yakuza 3 was replaced with the remaster, with Yui Hatano taking her place in the game. Then there's the more controversial removal, as this character and sub-story was actually in the original Western release of the game. In the original release of the game, there were a series of sub-stories involving a character named Michiru, who is a bit controversial. The character is intended to be trans, with the joke being that they don't pass, and they're a giant pervert who tries to assault Kiryu, a very transphobic stereotype. What's especially weird about this character is that Yakuza 3 also includes the character Ayaka, who works at the massage parlor. She's explicitly mentioned as being a trans woman, and Kiryu is shown being pretty accepting of her, so it's weird that this game features both this and Michiru. Interestingly though, Michiru wasn't actually removed from the game. You can still fight them in Yakuza 3's Ultimate Match mode in Mission Melee Match 7. Shinobi: Art of Vengeance. Released in August of 2025, Shinobi Art of Vengeance is a 2D action platformer about a clan of ninjas with supernatural powers defending the human race from a powerful, semi-supernatural PMC group. At first glance, this game has literally nothing to do with the Yakuza series, other than being published by Sega. And you're right, the game doesn't have anything to do with the Yakuza series. but it will. In August of 2026, a DLC for the game will be released, titled the Sega Villains Stage, which will allow you to fight several villains from Sega-owned franchises, such as Eggman from Sonic, Death Adder from Golden Axe, and the reason why I'm talking about this game in this video, Majima from Yakuza. This announcement caused a very tiny bit of controversy, as many people were confused as to why Majima was being referred to as a villain. And while Majima isn't really a villain anymore, let's not forget he started out as a major antagonist in the original game. Sure, they could have used somebody like Goda, but Majima is far more well-known and iconic, so I get including him over other characters. I'm not sure if there'll be a story involved in the DLC, but if there is, it'll be pretty funny to see an in-universe reason as to why Majima is interacting with all of these characters. Manga. While most people seem to think that the Yakuza series has never ventured into the world of comics and manga, that's just simply not true. It's just mostly true. Surprisingly, in the 20-plus years this franchise has been around, only 2 attempts have ever been made at adapting the Yakuza franchise in manga and comic form. The first venture into manga came in September of 2010, when the manga adaptation of Black Panther Like a New Dragon New Chapter began being published. Yep, not only did this game have the first ever Yakuza online multiplayer, but it also had the very first manga adaptation in the franchise. Written by UK Asada, this manga went on for 3 volumes, ending in July 2011. Like the games, this manga never received an English translation, though luckily there have been fan translations of it. The manga is actually fairly faithful to the source material, but unfortunately it's not a full adaptation, as the series only covers about the first third of the game. I've seen some people theorize that the series was cancelled due to low sales, but that's probably not true. It was probably always meant to end pretty early, as the game released around the same time as the manga, so basically the manga served as promotion. And speaking of manga being made exclusively to promote a video game, the second and final Yakuza manga was created to promote Yakuza 6. Releasing in 2018 to promote the worldwide release of Yakuza 6, The Dragon's Path is a digital manga that retells the events of Yakuza 1 through 5 and 0 in preparation for Yakuza 6. The manga was made to catch people up on the series, and the series mainly focuses on showcasing the events of the games through the eyes of supporting characters. For example, Daigo and Haruka. While this series has since been taken offline, it has been archived by fans, so you can still read it. Project X Zone 2. Released in November of 2015 in Japan and February of 2016 for the rest of the world, Project X Zone 2 is an RPG for the Nintendo 3DS, and is a giant crossover between Nintendo, Capcom, Sega, and Bandai Namco. So that means we get some Yakuza characters in the game, these being Kiryu and Majima, which shouldn't be a shock to anyone. Interestingly, they're not playable by themselves. They're part of the game's paired unit system, so they fight together and share the same health bar. Kiryu and Majima are thankfully part of the game's plot, which means that the two interact with a ton of characters you probably never thought they would ever interact with, like Phoenix Wright, Mega Man X, Jill Valentine, Felicia from Darkstalkers, Segata Sanshiro, Ryu, and Jin Kazuma. I guess this is the closest we'll ever get to Kiryu being a guest character in Tekken. Anyways, the plot of the game has Kiryu and Majima getting tangled up in a multiversal adventure as time rifts begin opening up everywhere. Sounds pretty strange, but that's not the strangest part about this crossover. The strangest part about the Yakuza franchise's involvement in the game is the fact that Kiryu and Majima are taken not from the mainline Yakuza games, but from Dead Souls. Yeah, for some reason, Dead Souls was the game chosen to rep the Yakuza franchise, with the zombie-infected Kamurocho serving as one of the game's settings. April Fool's video. So there's a myth that Yakuza 7's gameplay shift from an action brawler to turn-based combat was done not because the developers wanted to try something new, but instead because of the reception to an April Fool's video released in 2019. For those that don't know, the reveal that Yakuza 7 was going to use turn-based combat was through a video released on April Fool's Day 2019. Except, in Japan, while April Fool's Day is a thing, April 1st is also the first day of the new financial year for multiple companies, so usually Japanese gaming companies will make legit announcements on this day, and this video was a legit announcement. This myth actually comes from Toshihiro Nagoshi, as he said in an interview that, quote, "We released an April Fool's video. Many people were assuming that we were already making an RPG at that point. Actually, it was really something only made for April Fool's Day. It was still an action game at the time. From there, the video was positively received. We suddenly fully changed directions. We started making it an RPG." So, of course, with a quote like that, people thought he was being serious. But it turns out that he was just joking around, as confirmed by Masayoshi Yokoyama, who confirmed that Nagoshi was just joking, and that RGG Studio had decided on the game being a turn-based RPG before they even began development. So no, the reception to this April Fool's Day video was not the reason why the series became turn-based. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Released in October 2021, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is a remake of Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2. It's a goofy platformer game that surprisingly features a Yakuza connection in the base game, that being the fact that you can unlock Kiryu. Kiryu, of course, is trapped in a big ball like the other characters in the game, and you can have him explore the game's stages in the main portion of the game. Sadly, he's not playable in the game's multiplayer modes. If I had to guess why, it's probably because of Kiryu's bonus effect. You see, not only do you play as Kiryu, but when you select him, all of the collectible bananas in the game are replaced with Stamina X bottles. I'm genuinely shocked that this wasn't DLC. A few years later, these two IPs would cross paths again, this time in Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, but instead of this crossover being a fully playable new character, this was just a skin that made your monkey look like Majima, and it was part of some DLC. It wasn't in the base game, so all around just a complete step down from before. So much for not wanting to cross over with other games. Did Yokoyama just mean games not published by Sega? Shenmue is canon. The Yakuza franchise has often been called the spiritual successor to the Shenmue series, due to the games being so similar, and because of this, a lot of people have theorized that the two franchises are actually canon to each other. So, is there any truth to this? Surprisingly, yeah. In Yakuza 8, there's an in-game podcast that you can listen to called Segwaves, which has a bunch of references and Easter eggs to various Sega franchises. And in the very first episode of the podcast, it's mentioned that in Hawaii, one of the hosts met a man wearing a leather jacket with a tiger on the back, walking around a harbor, and the man would ask people if they knew a place where sailors hang out. He then proceeds to terrorize the town, asking questions about random things, like boat rides and warehouses. This is a very obvious reference to Ryo, the protagonist of Shenmue, and a very infamous part of the original game where you had to go around town asking for where sailors could be. While it's not confirmed, it seems like this reference means that Shenmue takes place in the same universe as Yakuza. Except there's a tiny little issue with this theory. The host of the podcast describes the man as a kid. Obviously, he doesn't actually mean like a kid, but instead a young adult, somebody who's like 18 to 21. This matches Ryu's description in the original Shenmue, but the problem is, Infinite Wealth takes place in 2023, while Shenmue 1 takes place in 1986. So, how can this be Ryo? Ryo was born in 1968, so if he's still alive by the time of Infinite Wealth, he'd be 55. Unless Ryo has a serious case of babyface, I don't know how a 55-year-old man could be mistaken for being an 18-year-old. Yakuza 0 Part 2. So this is a potential game that's been discussed since around 2018 at the latest. During an event in 2018, it was revealed by Yakuza producer Daisuke Sato that a direct sequel to Yakuza 0 had been discussed. Nothing serious as far as we know, but ideas for such a game have been bounced around between developers at RGG Studio. A few months later, Saito was asked again about this potential Yakuza 0 Part 2, and he confirmed that this potential game wasn't being developed right now, but he did say that if they were to make the game, it would once again be a game where you can play as both Kiryu and Majima. Sadly, since then, we haven't had any update on this idea, so it's entirely possible that this game won't happen. Though RGG Studio do like to reuse scrapped game concepts. For example, one of the earliest ideas for Yakuza 3 was that Kiryu was gonna have amnesia. This amnesia storyline was later given to Majima well over a decade later in Dead Yakuza Tell No Tales. So we still could get this direct sequel. And seeing how the director's cut brought Lee back from the dead, and he's not present in any of the other games, maybe Lee was brought back to appear in this game. Saijima's Imperial Japanese soldier costume. In Yakuza 4, there's a story about Saijima digging around underneath Kamurocho, and he stumbles upon various air raid shelters that were developed during World War II that were buried in the years since. Upon completing these missions, Saijima is given an old katana used during the war. And this wasn't the last time that Saijima had a run-in with some old war stuff. In Yakuza 5, there's an alternate skin for Saijima that I assume was given to him as a tribute to this storyline. This being an Imperial Japanese soldier uniform. Now, this isn't a World War II Imperial Japanese uniform like some people claim it is. This is actually a uniform worn during the Russo-Japanese War, and these uniforms were worn in extremely cold locations. So with Saijima's history with old war stuff, and his story taking place primarily in a snowy location, this alternate skin makes perfect sense for him. But for some reason, this outfit was removed from the game when Yakuza 5 was released worldwide. A lot of people seem to think that this was removed because American censors goofed up and thought it was a World War II costume. But that's probably not the case, as while this uniform was known for its usage during the Russo-Japanese War, it was also used by Japanese soldiers during the Japanese rule over Korea. So it seems far more likely that this costume was cut in order not to offend Korean players, as Japan committed an enormous amount of atrocities to the Korean people during this time. What happened to Masato Aizawa? Masato Aizawa is a major antagonist in Yakuza 5, and unlike some other major antagonists in the series, he doesn't die at the end of the game, or is even arrested. Despite this, we have no idea what happened to him after the events of the game, as he never appears again, nor is he even mentioned again. This has led many fans to speculate what happened to him. The last time we see him is when Kiryu is telling him to get stronger and face off against him again in the future. So I guess he could be training. Like he went into hiding and is planning his revenge. Though Yakuza 5 takes place in 2012, and the series is currently set in 2024, so, if he's planning his revenge, he should probably get on with it. Though this is all assuming that he survived. Now, I fully believe that he survived the game, but people have pointed out that after Kiryu beats him, Aizawa falls unconscious in the freezing cold, and is currently bleeding pretty badly, so while we don't see it, it is possible that he could have died here, as it seems like him and Kiryu were the only two at the Tojo headquarters at the time, so nobody was around to get him to the hospital, or at the very least, get him out of the cold. One last thing I want to mention before moving on is that Aizawa's oath brother, Yu Morinaga, who is killed off screen, might not actually be dead. There's a theory that Morinaga is actually Hanawa from Erased His Name and Infinite Wealth. This is because they share the same voice actor, and we never actually see Morinaga's body. And Yokoyama confirmed it. Yeah, he randomly revealed it pretty casually. This is despite the fact that it's never mentioned in-game that these two are the same character, so either Yokoyama decided to just randomly confirm it, or he confirmed it because this reveal is gonna eventually happen in a future game. Anyways, I bring this up because if RGG Studio has brought back Aizawa's oath brother as part of a secret spooky organization, it's possible that maybe Aizawa is also part of this organization. Now, I'm fully aware of how unpopular of an idea that is, but I think it's something that RGG Studio might actually do. Only time will tell. Oh yeah, there's also a robot version of Aizawa in Erased His Name. It's not him though, it be a robot. Rainbow Six Siege. So this is the weirdest collab that Yakuza has ever done. I actually didn't even believe it when I first heard about it. But yes, in May 2022, it was revealed that Rainbow Six Siege would be receiving 3 different skins based on Yakuza characters. The operator Echo got 2 different skins. The first made him look like Kiryu, while the other one made him look like Majima. And then there's the final skin, which is actually insane. I want you to guess which character you think they had a skin based on. Saejima? Nope. Ichiban? Nope. Daigo? Nope. Goda? Nope. Akiyama? Nope. The third skin was a skin based on Sayama. Yes, the operator Hibana got a Sayama skin. Keep in mind, this was before her return to the franchise in Yakuza 8, so this was technically her first appearance after Yakuza 3, besides Kiwami 2. Kiwami 2 wasn't even released around the same time as this collab, so you can't even argue that it was the tie-in with that game. I guess they wanted to have a female operator skin, and admittedly, there's not a ton of female characters from the Yakuza franchise to pick from. Like, who else could they have chosen? Hana, Adult Haruka, Kasahara, Yayoi Dojima, Seiko? Anyways, a Rainbow Six Siege collab was just a really weird idea in my opinion. Thankfully, these 3 skins were at the very least free. No, of course not. They costed money. Of course they did. You think Ubisoft's just gonna give you free stuff? Yakuza 1 and 2 HD Edition. For a very long time, the Yakuza franchise was a PlayStation exclusive series. Nowadays, pretty much every Yakuza game is released on every console: PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and the Switch. But like I said, it took a while, and it took so long because early attempts at releasing the series on other consoles were, not very successful. In August of 2013, exclusively in Japan, the first 2 Yakuza games were given HD remasters, and were released on a console that wasn't PlayStation, and that console was the Wii U. Yeah, you probably see why this didn't end very well. Yakuza 1 and 2 HD Edition didn't have any new content. They were just HD ports of the games for the Wii U. And they weren't even very good ports. According to both critics and players alike, the ports were extremely buggy, and shockingly, there were parts of the games that weren't remastered. A ton of cutscenes from the games just didn't receive the HD upgrade. Players were quick to notice this, and because of this, along with the fact that the Wii U wasn't exactly the best-selling console, Yakuza 1 and 2 HD Edition sold horribly, not even making it into the top 50 games within its first week. In fact, while we don't know the exact sales numbers, we do know that within its first week, it sold less than 1,800 copies. At the time of its release, RGG Studio claimed that this port was just an experiment, and that it wasn't that big of a deal that it failed. But after a few years, people from the studio have admitted that this port was a complete and utter failure. In fact, a Yakuza 0 Wii U port was actually in the cards at one point, but due to this failure, the Wii U Yakuza 0 port was scrapped extremely early in development. Kappas. In Yakuza 4, Saejima comes into contact with one of the Yakuza franchise's stranger paranormal beings. In the sub-story Green Shadow, Saejima discovers some homeless men arguing with each other about somebody stealing their food, and that there's some strange green little creature wandering around the sewers. Eventually, Saejima finds this green creature, and it turns out it's a kappa. A kappa is a creature from Japanese folklore that are known for being mischievous little pranksters. Their favorite way of pranking people is drowning them. Yeah, they really like drowning people. Not really much of a prank, but they like doing it. They also like to steal a ball-like organ that doesn't actually exist from people's buttholes. Again, not really a prank, but yeah, kappas are a bit strange. Anyways, the kappa escapes before Saejima can catch it. So in order to trap the kappa, Saejima tries to lure it out of hiding using food. And he's eventually successful, and when he catches the kappa, it turns out that it's just a man pretending to be a kappa. Turns out a TV station had hired him to pretend to be a kappa so that they can make a TV show based around hunting him in the sewers. They also forgot about him, so he's been basically living in the sewers dressed as a kappa for a month straight. But that's when the second twist comes in. As the story comes to a close, that's when Saejima sees it, a real-life kappa watching him. So not only do ghosts and aliens exist in the Yakuza franchise, so do kappas. Tatara Hisoka has a full model. So here's a real quick one. In Yakuza 8, we're introduced to Chitose Fujinomiya, who had a VTuber identity named Tatara Hisoka. While we only see her upper half in the game, that may not have always been the original plan, as digging into the game's files reveals that her entire body is modeled, and it's pretty well detailed, with different colored thigh highs, straps, and shoes with ribbons on them. Were we originally supposed to see her entire body in the game? Personally, I think it's very likely that we were. As to when we would have seen her full body, I have no idea. Maybe we were supposed to get more scenes of her? I don't know. What species of shark is the Tyrant of the Tides? In Yakuza 8, there's a boss fight against a giant killer shark. Like a literal kaiju-sized shark. It's known as the Tyrant of the Tides, and it's an extremely territorial shark that's known for eating anyone or anything that dares venture into its territory. So, what is the Tyrant of the Tides? Like, what species of shark is it? Well, there's three options. The first option, and the one you're probably thinking about right now, is that the Tyrant of the Tides is a megalodon, a giant prehistoric shark that lived around 23 to 3.6 million years ago. The evidence for this is, well, 1, it's huge, 2, the Tyrant of the Tides lives off of the coast of Hawaii, and we know that megalodons preferred living in warmer waters. And finally, 3, the Tyrant of the Tides looks identical to a Hollywood interpretation of a megalodon. But that's the problem. We now know that the Hollywood interpretation of a megalodon as a giant great white shark is wrong. The Megalodon most likely looked more like this. So, the Tyrant of the Tides can't be a Megalodon. At least, if the Yakuza series was even vaguely realistic. I don't think RGG Studio care about what it actually looked like in real life. The second option is that the Tyrant of the Tides is a great white shark with gigantism, an extremely rare medical condition that causes humans and animals to grow extremely large. And while gigantism does make animals pretty big, I don't think gigantism could make a great white shark this big. And finally, there's the Black Demon, a cryptid giant shark that reportedly lives off the west coast of Mexico. Now, the problem with this theory is that while it reportedly lives in the Pacific Ocean, it lives in a completely different area from where the Tyrant of the Tides lives. Also, the Black Demon is called the Black Demon because it's a great white shark that's almost entirely black, and the Tyrant of the Tides doesn't look like that. Because it perfectly resembles a Hollywood megalodon, I think it's safe to say that the Tyrant of the Tides is intended to be the last surviving megalodon. Black Panther Like a Dragon New Chapter TV Series. Airing from October to December of 2010, this series adapts Black Panther Like a Dragon New Chapter in live action. Yup, not only did Black Panther get a manga adaptation, but it also got a live-action TV show adaptation, lasting 11 episodes. It seems the series did pretty well, as when Black Panther's sequel was released in March of 2012, a live-action show adapting that game was greenlit, once again for 11 episodes, airing from April to June 2012. Both shows were extremely different from the games they were based on. Essentially, they took the premise of the games and did their own thing with it. At least, I think. Here's the problem with this show. Very few Yakuza fans outside of Japan have played the Black Panther duology, and even fewer have watched the show, and even fewer have played the games and watched the shows. So information about the shows and what they change from the games is extremely hard to come by, so I don't really have too much else to say about them. There are some interesting casting choices in the show, though. For example, the character Kudo is played in live action by her voice actress, and Hideo Nakano, Shibusawa's voice actor, actually made his debut in the Yakuza franchise much earlier than Yakuza 0, as he plays Detective Takinaka in the series. And finally, Takumi Saito, who played Yokio in the show, actually took over playing the character for the second game. It's kinda crazy how much marketing this PSP spin-off game got. 3 volumes of a manga and 2 seasons of a live-action show, all released around the same time as the game. You would think that RGG Studio would care more about this duology with the amount of money they spent marketing it, but I guess not. While the first season is fairly easy to find online, its second season is a lot harder to find, and apparently there's not even any fan subs of it, so good luck trying to understand it. The Sankubetsu Brown Bear Incident. In Yakuza 5, there's a giant man-eating bear named Yama Uroshi. I'll talk about it a bit more later, but what you need to know about him right now is that he's a bear that patrols the mountain forest next to the hunting village in the game. Sometime in 2007, it would travel to the hunting village after some humans overhunted, and when he got to the village, he destroyed some homes and absolutely annihilated the village's food supplies. Since then, the bear has almost been like a demon, stalking the village and attacking anyone who ventures into the forest. While this seems like a pretty crazy story, this story is actually inspired by a real-life event known as the Sankubetsu Brown Bear Incident. From December 9th to December 14th, 1915, an Izo brown bear terrorized a small village in Hokkaido. During this time, the bear injured 3 people and killed 7. The bear literally broke into people's homes. Its first victims were a baby and a woman, and they were killed early in the morning by the bear, with the aftermath of the attack being described as a slaughterhouse. But the body of the woman wasn't actually there at the farmhouse where the bear attacked. No, the bear dragged her corpse into the mountains, where it was found the next day. One of the most horrific aspects about this bear's rampage occurred on December 10th, when the bear killed a pregnant woman who begged for the bear to eat her head instead of her stomach. The bear, of course, didn't listen. Over the next few days, the local government conducted a hunt for the bear, with sniper teams ordered to shoot the bear on sight. Overall, there were over 600 hunters on the hunt for the bear. This would all come to an end on the morning of December 14th, in which the bear was finally killed. Turns out the bear was around 750 pounds and nearly 9 feet tall. Its head was actually larger than normal, and when the villagers cut into the bear, they found the remains of its victims digesting. But it wasn't just people in its stomach. The bear had also been raiding the village's food supply, so that food supply was also found digesting. Sadly, despite the bear now being dead, it would still claim another victim, as one of the injured, a child, died 3 years later due to complications from his injuries caused by the bear. It's a horrifying tragedy that we still don't know everything about. Like, why did this happen? People have speculated that the bear woke up early from its hibernation and was extremely hungry, so that's why it attacked. But there's really no way we can know that for sure. Binary Domain. Released in February of 2012, Binary Domain is one of the very rare non-Yakuza games released by RGG Studio post-2010. In fact, it was actually the very first game the studio created under the name RGG Studio. The game is a third-person shooter made primarily by the same team who made Dead Souls. This actually helped with the development of Binary Domain, because it meant that the team could work off of the gunplay from that game and make it far more enjoyable. And because it was made by the same team and by the same studio, of course there's going to be some Yakuza connections in the game. A DLC was released the same month as the game's release that allowed you to play as Kiryu, Goda, Akiyama, and Majima in the game's multiplayer mode. But sadly, this DLC was exclusively released in Japan, despite the fact that both Binary Domain and Dead Souls were released worldwide. Each of the 4 Yakuza characters actually come with 2 different skins. Your character's skin changes depending on which faction you're on. If you're fighting for the Ministry, the characters will look like how they do in the Yakuza games, just with some ammo pouches and stuff. While if you're on the Resistance side, each of the Yakuza characters will dress more like a soldier. Akiyama was supposed to be in Yakuza 7. Since Yakuza 4, Akiyama has appeared in every single mainline Yakuza game except for Yakuza 7. Well, he's also not in Erased His Name either, but people debate on that game being mainline. Anyways, because he doesn't show up in Yakuza 7, many people believe that he was originally going to appear in the game, but was scrapped due to Akiyama's voice actor, Koichi Yamadera, being extremely popular, so he was too busy to record lines for the game, and so Akiyama was replaced with Nick Ogata. So what's the evidence for this theory? Well, for starters, Yamadera did have quite the stacked schedule from 2018 to 2020. Voicing characters in Carol and Tuesday, My Hero Academia, Pokemon, City Hunter, Lupin III, Super Robot Wars, Fate Grand Order, and oh yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3, where he plays Donald Duck, a main character in a JRPG. Hell, he even did 2 Kingdom Hearts games in this time, as the spin-off Melody of Memory was released in 2020. So this part of the theory checks out. The other part of the theory involves Like a Dragon Online. Remember how I said that the game's main plot was an alternate take on Yakuza 7's plot? Well, it's widely believed that this game's story was based on an early draft of Yakuza 7's plot, which is why its story differs in some places. And Akiyama is actually a recurring character in this game's plot. So yeah, it seems very likely that this theory is correct. Max Cut Ishin cameo. So a bunch of Yakuza characters appear in Ishin. As mentioned before, the historical and fictional characters in the game are played by characters from the main series. But one character from the main series didn't end up making it into the game, that being Mac from Yakuza 3, 4, and 5. He was planned to appear in the game at one point, and he would have been used to introduce the player to Ishin's photo mode. And for those who have played Ishin, you're probably confused by me saying photo mode, because there's no photo mode in the game. Well, that's why Mac got cut. Yokoyama made the decision to cut the photo mode feature from the game, as it just didn't make sense to have the ability to take photos in a game that takes place in 19th century Japan. And because of this, there was no reason to include Mac in the game. Thankfully, due to some behind-the-scenes stuff, we know what Ishin Mac would have looked like. Yakuza 6 Demo. Now, it's super common for games to have free demos released in order for people to try out the game. The Yakuza series, for example, still does this, with the most recent demo for Kiwami 3 being very controversial, to say the least. But the most controversial Yakuza demo has to go to Yakuza 6's demo, because this demo did a big old oopsie. You see, the idea behind the demo was that you'd play the first chapter of the game, but the demo they released accidentally had the entire game in it. Now, obviously, the game was locked away, so after you beat Chapter 1, the demo ended. But some people were actually able to bypass this, and got to play the entirety of Yakuza 6 an entire month before its release. How were players able to bypass it? Simple. By playing the game normally. Yeah, I actually lied before. The demo didn't actually function correctly, so when Chapter 1 ended, the game kept going. This was for the worldwide release of the game, so for a very brief window, players in the West could get Yakuza 6 for free. Now, I said very brief window because, obviously, when RGG Studio and Sega found out about this error, they immediately removed the demo from digital storefronts, and they released a patch that corrected the error. But if you didn't accept the update for the demo, you actually had the game for free. Oh yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that in the demo, Kiryu had a completely different outfit as his default look. And this look wasn't even an optional skin in the final release. It just ceased to be. It doesn't exist anymore. Masaru Watase was supposed to be a playable character. Despite being called the Yakuza series, well, in America it was, one of the rules that RGG Studio has for writing Yakuza games is that you can't actually play as a member of the Yakuza for an entire game. This is due to the fact that they're worried that if they did this, the games would be glorifying the Yakuza lifestyle. This rule ended up forcing the studio to scrap an entire playable character from Yakuza 5. Masaru Watase was planned to be one of the game's 5 playable characters, but his storyline was scrapped fairly early on for this reason. As to who he was replaced by, we don't know, but if I had to guess, it was probably Shinada, as his story is the least connected to the rest of the plot. I assume his storyline was going to be about him looking for Daigo, but I'm just speculating. Sadly, there's nothing known about his cut storyline, most likely in part due to it being cut so early in development. Everybody's Golf 6. Everybody's Golf 6, aka Hot Shots Golf World Invitational, is a golfing game released December 2011 in Japan, and February 2012 for the rest of the world. Originally just released on the PS Vita, the game was later ported to the PS3 in November 2012, and in April 2013, Kiryu was added into both versions of the game as a DLC character. Except, he's a Japanese exclusive DLC character, so that's cool. Kiryu actually had brand new voice lines recorded for the game, which is a lot more than other Yakuza crossover DLCs do. As for his stats, he's got a B in Control, D in Impact, B in Power, and B in Spin. I have no idea what any of that means, because I've literally never heard of this game before working on this video. Not much else to say, other than the game also gives us this strange chibi Kiryu, And for some reason, out of the 3 Japanese exclusive DLC characters, Kiryu is the only one that's still available to download. No joke, if you have access to the Japanese PlayStation Store, you can still buy him. Also, since you can buy this DLC for the PS Vita version of the game, this makes Everybody's Golf 6 the only time the Yakuza franchise was on the Vita. Well, kinda. More on that later. Kamurocho Hostess TV. So this is easily the strangest Yakuza show ever made. Kamurocho Hostess TV was a live-action web series released sometime in 2010 and continued until June of 2011. This series was a mix between a documentary, a variety show, and a game show. Information about it is extremely hard to come by, but what we do know is that the series focused on the hostesses featured in Yakuza 4, and later the hostesses featured in Dead Souls. The series featured the models auditioning for their roles, along with them playing games, like darts, some kind of training camp, ping pong, they played Yakuza 4 a few times, and there was also some palm readings. That's not really a game, but they did it. And there was a bit of behind-the-scenes stuff about Yakuza 4 and Dead Souls that was shown off. They also did skits, contests, and tourism advertisements. The series was released on its own website and used Ustream, which is now IBM Cloud Radio, to broadcast the episodes. The series was also partnered with Kai Razor, which was also doing a cross-marketing campaign with the Yakuza series around this time. Despite the series ending in June 2011, the website and all of its content was actually uploaded sometime in late 2021. While none of the videos can be played on the website anymore, thankfully the series was uploaded to YouTube, so all 65 episodes of the series are luckily not lost. Though some of the pages and features on the website haven't been archived, so they're lost. Side note, one of the hostesses cosplays as Hatsune Miku in a few episodes, which technically makes this the first time the Yakuza franchise has crossed paths with Miku. The Walkman DLC. Yakuza 0 received an exclusive DLC in Japan, one that wasn't even included in the game's director's cut. Though its files are actually still in the worldwide release of the game, you just can't access them. So how do you get this DLC? Do you buy it from the store? Nope. Did you have to pre-order the game? Nope. You had to buy an entire physical album called Yakuza 0 80s Hits Collection. The album featured 10 classic J-pop and J-rock songs from the 1980s, and 2 covers of songs sung by Kiryu and Nishiki's voice actors, and each album came with a code that let you download the Walkman DLC. If you want to do it nowadays, too bad. Every single code has been used, so it's impossible to get this DLC through legit means nowadays. Upon downloading the DLC, if you go up to Bob, he'll give you an in-game Walkman that lets you listen to music while you walk around. The Walkman lets you listen to all 10 of those 80s songs from the album, along with various songs from previous Yakuza games. You could even modify the Walkman's playlist. I can kinda understand making it so that the licensed songs are exclusive via buying the album, but there's no reason why the Walkman itself couldn't have just been in the base game. Like a Dragon Bonds. Released in March of 2013, exclusively in Japan, Like a Dragon Bonds was a Yakuza spin-off game developed for mobile phones. Lasting only 5 months before being shut down, the game was some kind of card game. I say some kind of card game because there's very little information about this game out there, due to it not lasting very long and it being exclusive to Japan. What we do know about the game is that the cards could be upgraded. There was an in-game currency, NPCs could ask you to do jobs for them, and there was some kind of hub world. It seems that the game had you move around a town to a certain location, but on your way, you would get attacked by random people. And because the game seems to have some kind of connection to social media, It's possible that you could also use cards from your friends to help you out in fights. You could also create clans, or alliances. No videos of this game in action seem to exist, and there's only a very limited amount of screenshots that exist. Sadly, it seems very unlikely that this game will ever be found, as this game was essentially a browser game that could be accessed via an app. The app was just a portal to the game. All of the game's files were server-side, and since the servers were shut down well over a decade ago, archiving this game doesn't seem very possible. As to why this game ended so quickly, we don't know, but if I had to guess, it was due to the fact that the company who published the game, Gree, already had another Yakuza game out at the same time, one that was far more popular, that I'll talk about in just a little bit. Like a Dragon Mobile for Gree. And by just a little bit, I mean now. Like a Dragon Mobile for Gree is pretty much exactly what its name suggests. It was a spin-off Yakuza game for mobile devices that was published by the company Gree. Released in February of 2011 and shutting down in April of 2013, this game was the very first time the Yakuza series ventured into the world of virtual card games. The game is known for its chibi art style, and the fact that the game had some pretty neat connections to console Yakuza games. For example, this is one of the rare times a Yakuza game acknowledged the Black Panther duology, as there was a cross-promotion with this game and Black Panther 2 that allowed you to get Black Panther characters, or cards I guess, in the mobile game. Like a Dragon Mobile for Gree played similar to other games of this nature. You collected cards via the game's gacha system, made friends via social media, created alliances and helped out other players, and upgraded your very own city using resources that you earned. I suppose this is where I should mention that the social media aspect of this game was not just built into the game, it was the game. Both this and Like a Dragon Bonds were not just published by Gree, but they were hosted on Gree's website. For those that don't know, Gree is a social media network in Japan, so these games were basically Gree's equivalent of Facebook's social games. And just like Bonds, this game's files were all server-side, so this game is pretty much impossible to play these days. Though, unlike Bonds, there's far more images of this game out there, but there's only a single video of this game in action, and it's a very brief, like 2-second long clip from a TV ad for the game. Dave the Diver. In April of 2025, the Yakuza franchise crossed over with the game Dave the Diver. This DLC is special because we know that it's going to become impossible to purchase in the near future. Yeah, it's been confirmed that this DLC will be removed from online stores on December 31st, 2026. So, if you have Dave the Diver and are a fan of the Yakuza series, you might want to grab this before you literally can't. Anyways, the DLC, Ichiban's Holiday, sees Ichiban traveling to the Blue Hole, a beautiful yet strange part of the Pacific Ocean where every species of fish lives there, along with an entire mermaid-like society. Also, Godzilla lives here too, but that's not important right now. As the name of the DLC suggests, Ichiban is at the Blue Hole on vacation. He even traveled there with Kashiwagi. But Ichiban doesn't really get to relax, as he discovers some pirates poaching and experimenting on dolphins and other aquatic life. And bro's not about to let that happen, so he teams up with Dave the Diver and friend to infiltrate the pirates' base, and put an end to their plans. This DLC is inspired by the Streets of Rage series as well, due to the fact that most of the gameplay in the DLC is a beat-em-up designed after those games. The game doesn't just add beat-em-up gameplay though, it also has a karaoke mode. And by karaoke mode, I mean it's a single song. But hey, it's something. Oh yeah, and Majima randomly shows up in the DLC briefly to help fight the leader of the pirates. Persona. In Persona 5, it's revealed that the Yakuza series exists in this universe. as the live-action film adaptation of the original game is directly mentioned in the game, though in the game's sequel, Persona 5 Strikers, it's revealed that there's also a film in this universe called Dragon Like a Yakuza. So I don't really know what's going on there. But what I do know is that Persona 5 has a much more direct crossover with the Yakuza series. In Persona 5, Dancing in Starlight, there's a DLC that gives the main cast of Persona 5 costumes based on characters from the Yakuza series. These skins are based on Kiryu, Haruka, Majima, Akiyama, Goda, Saejima, and the Florist. No Ichiban though, as this DLC was released before the release of Yakuza 7. Not much else to say, only included this entry because I know a few of my viewers are Persona fans. Stage play. At the end of April 2015, a stage show titled Stage Like a Dragon was held at the Akasaka ACT Center in Tokyo. This stage play was created as part of the Yakuza franchise's 10th anniversary, and the play itself is an adaptation of the original game. It's a pretty faithful adaptation of the game, or at least as faithful as they could be in a 2.5-hour stage show, though there are two major changes. The first is the inclusion of Goda. Yeah, Goda is a supporting character in this play, and is one of the many people out to capture Haruka. And the second change is the comedy. A lot more comedy was added to the game's story. For example, the Florist is an absolute goofball in this version of the story, and while Yuya has always been a fun character, he's dialed up to 11 in this. Thankfully, this play is not lost media. Yeah, you might think it would be, but no. The play was recorded and released on DVD shortly after the play's brief run. And since then, there's been various fan subs of the stage play made. Last thing I want to mention is the fourth wall break that Kiryu does. At one point, Majima stabs him, and Kiryu's just like, "Thank God I picked up those bandages from the coin locker." It's a very, very silly play, but you can tell that the people who made it really cared about the Yakuza series. I should also briefly mention that in October 2025, RGG Studio announced that the series would be getting a second stage show. Though this one seems like it's going to be an original story, as a popularity poll was held in November, with the top 10 characters in the poll being in the stage play. And in December, we got the full lineup. So in this upcoming stage play, we'll see Kiryu, Majima, Saejima, Nishiki, Ichiban, Tamazawa, Daigo, Mine, Sukagira, and Higashi. I'm actually kinda livid about these results, because Akiyama, Goda, Shinada, and Tanimura were all runners-up. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the poll results right now, for the first time, and this stage play could have been absolutely insane. Kei was here, the adult baby from Kiwami 2 was here, the original Pocket Circuit Fighter was here, Sayama, Baba, Rikia, and Nishida were all here as well. Haruka is at 40, which is absolutely insane. Date's at 47. Bro's in every game and he's at 47? The absolute disrespect. Like a Dragon cut costumes. In Yakuza 7, there's multiple costumes found in the game's files that don't appear in the final game. Sadly, there's no images of these costumes. While there's some cut color variants, like red, yellow, and blue, the most interesting cut costumes are the fantasy skins. There's 7 of these skins, these being Hero, Wizard, Warrior, Chinese Martial Artist, Swordsman, White Mage, and Thief. We sadly don't know anything else about these costumes, though it's been speculated by fans that the Knight skin featured in the Premium Outfit Pack is one of these cut costumes, or at the very least was inspired by these scrapped costumes. the many time-traveling guns of Yakuza 0. Now, the Yakuza series is well known for its asset reuse. For those that don't know what that means, it refers to assets, like models and sound effects from previous games, being reused for future games. Usually these assets receive some kind of enhancement, like updated textures, but sometimes they're literally just the models from the previous entries, with nothing changed. Some people hate this aspect about games, but honestly, I've always really liked seeing asset reuse in games. I think it's a smart way to cut down on dev time, and I just think it's pretty neat. Now, like I said, the Yakuza series is pretty well known for this, and Yakuza 0 is no exception. But because Yakuza 0 takes place in 1988, some of the weapons reused from previous games don't make sense here, as they were made years later. For example, the SIG Pro used by Awano shouldn't exist, as that weapon wasn't created until 1999. The broken M1985 is based on the Bakal MP133, which is a bit of a problem, as this gun wasn't made until the year 2000. And then there's Oda's pistol of choice. It's a bit weird, as the model is actually a hybrid between the Sig Sauer P226 and the Heckler & Koch USP. While the P226 works for 1988, the USP wasn't made until 1993. By the way, I'm not critiquing the game for these goofs, I just thought it'd be fun to point them out. Dead Souls is canon. Yes, you heard that right, there's a theory that Dead Souls is canon. Well, kinda, sorta. It's a bit of a joke theory, but it's still a fun idea, so I thought I'd mention it. In Yakuza Kiwami, as one of Majima's many different encounters, he shows up as a zombie, and you have to fight him. By the end of the encounter, Majima reveals that he was recording the entire thing, and mentions how he might turn the recording into a full-on zombie movie to make some money. This little joke from Majima has led to some people to speculate that eventually Majima decided to actually create a full-on zombie movie, and we play through that zombie film in Dead Souls. There's really no evidence for this outside of this line about Majima being vaguely interested in making a zombie film, but it's a fun idea that Dead Souls is an in-universe film created by Majima. Though there is a bit of a problem with this theory. In Yakuza 8, Kiryu actually mentions remembering some kind of crazy zombie-like adventure he went on, though he only vaguely remembers it, and he chalks it up to either being a dream or some memory from another reality. This seems to imply that Majima didn't make a zombie film, though Dead Souls being a dream does still make it canon. Kinda, technically, sorta, I guess. A Fairly Odd Christmas. So here's a real quick silly one. In the second terrible live-action Fairly OddParents movie, A Fairly Odd Christmas, we get a few scenes at the start of the film of the main cast granting wishes across the globe, and one of the countries shown being visited is Japan. And very briefly, you can see an advertisement for Yakuza Dead Souls, featuring Kiryu and Haruka. But what's even crazier about this scene is that the advertisement is shown right above a Don Quixote. Yeah, the Don Quixotes that you can visit throughout the Yakuza series are very real places. And this advertisement for Dead Souls was probably put up on this Don Quixote due to the store's connection with the series. Yakuza 4 Security Guard's Sweaty Armpit. So here's a really stupid entry. I found this out while looking through the Internet Firearm Database pages for the Yakuza franchise. For some weird reason, some of the prison guards featured in Yakuza 4 have sweaty armpit stains on their character models. It's an extremely minor detail that I'm pretty sure no other enemy in the game has. Not much else to say, it's just a really weird and funny detail. Did the homeless guy in Yakuza 0 kill that homeless hunter? In Yakuza 0, there's a scene where Kiryu helps out some homeless people when some homeless hunters come out looking for them. But there's a bit of a weird part in this scene. After defeating the hunters, the lead homeless guy picks up the hunter's bat and says some pretty ominous things. He then raises the bat, and right before he swings the bat down on the hunter, the game cuts away, and in the following scene, it's not mentioned what happened after that. So what happened? The homeless hunter directly said that he wanted to kill the homeless man, so maybe the homeless man killed him. Seiryu even says that jail isn't the worst punishment the hunters could get. Originally, I thought this was just him threatening to beat the crap out of them, but with the homeless guy about to crack the hunter's skull open with the bat, maybe he was referring to them being killed. But at the same time, I don't think the homeless guy wants to go to jail for murder. And Seiryu is being hunted by pretty much every Yakuza in the city at this point in the story, so he probably would have stopped the homeless guy from killing the hunter, due to not wanting to draw attention to his hiding spot. That, and Seiryu is also usually pretty anti-murder. And the homeless guy does say, hopefully they won't be coming back now, which would imply that he let the lead hunter live. Lao Gui and Sam Lee. Lao Gui is an antagonist in Yakuza 0, but honestly, he's a bit of a forgettable one. He's threatening, and his boss fight is pretty fun, but he barely does anything in the story. Despite this, Lao Gui has an extremely strange aspect about him. In the Chinese version of Yakuza 0, he is voiced by Hong Kong actor Sam Lee. But not only was he voiced by Sam Lee, his face was completely remodeled to look like Sam Lee. Sam Lee's performance as Lao Gui was even the default voice work in the original worldwide release of Yakuza 0, before a patch replaced him with the actor who played him in the original Japanese version of the game. But anyways, why did they change the character's design exclusively for the Chinese version of the game? We don't know for certain, but we do know why Sam Lee was casted in the first place. Turns out that Nagoshi is a huge fan of the film Ping Pong, which Sam Lee stars in. So he was casted in the game for that reason. The most common theory as to why his model was changed was purely to make the voice match the actor. Notice how, for the most part, when a character in the series is recasted, their design is changed to better reflect their new actor. So, because Sam Lee is pretty popular in Hong Kong and China, RGG Studio decided to do this for Lao Gui. Hangman and Redman. In Yakuza 6, we're introduced to one of the strangest characters in the entire franchise, which is honestly saying quite a lot. Hangman is a psychotic man dressed in bondage gear who is just chilling out in the ruins of Shangri-La. He's got a gag in his mouth that looks like an eyeball, and he attacks Seiryu unprovoked. There's literally no explanation for him, no backstory or anything. He just shows up, acts freaky, and gets his ass kicked. Since the release of Yakuza 6, he's actually appeared in 3 more games. In Judgment, he's seen in the ruins of Monsieur Lee, where he attacks Yagami, only to then be defeated. In Erased His Name, he's shown as one of the fighters in the castle's Colosseum. And finally, in Yakuza 8, Hangman is one of the joke options for the Mismatch minigame. Through these appearances, we learn very, very little about him. In Yakuza 8, it's stated that his mom thinks that he should be more girly. He's also catfishing in this game, so that might not actually be true. Then there's Kiwami 2, which introduces the character Redman, who looks nearly identical to Hangman, except for the fact that his costume is now red. He shows up as an enemy in one of Kiryu's bouncer missions, and is even recruitable in the Majima construction side game. He then appears very briefly in Yakuza 7 as a potential employee that you can recruit for Ichiban Holdings. Interestingly, while Hangman is shown to be rather monstrous and not very intelligent, Redman is shown talking and is rather polite. So who are Hangman and Redman? Are they the same person? After all, they never appear in the same game. Maybe they are the same person, and these are split personalities. Redman is the kind personality, while Hangman is a literal monster. Or maybe Hangman and Redman are actually bodyguards. There's a similar character to Hangman and Redman named Super Guard Machine that appears in Erased His Name. As his name suggests, he acts as a guard in combat. And in Yakuza 8, there's two hangman-like people, both called Hitman, who act as bodyguards for Dwight. This is interesting because Hangman appears in locations the main characters need to investigate, almost as if somebody hired him to stand guard. And Redman is shown to be completely cool with working for somebody, so maybe Hangman and Redman are just part of some weird bodyguard service that makes people dress up like this. Yakuza Soul Song. This is easily the most obscure Yakuza series ever made. Soul Song, or Like a Dragon Poem of Soul, or Yakuza The Song of Soul, it's got 3 different names for some reason, is a 4-episode miniseries that aired from November to December of 2016. The series follows a group of dudes who join the Yakuza as they're inspired by Kiryu. So they travel to Kamurocho, join the Yakuza, and try to rise up the ranks, all while dealing with various other criminals. But here's where things get weird. The series isn't actually a Yakuza series. It's called Yakuza, or Like a Dragon, and it has Sega's involvement, but it's not canon to the Yakuza series. No, this series takes place in an alternate reality to our own. This universe is pretty much identical to ours, except for the fact that Kabukicho is called Kamurocho. But how can these guys be inspired by Kiryu if he doesn't exist? Simple. They're fans of the Yakuza game series and think Kiryu is awesome, so they join the Yakuza because of him. It's a really bizarre idea for a series, and it's made even more bizarre because the show was meant to promote Yakuza 6. Outside of the series referencing the Yakuza games and the main character dressing up as Kiryu, I don't really see how this show would get people hyped for Yakuza 6. I wouldn't be surprised if this show was greenlit as part of RGG Studios' rule that the series can't focus on a member of the Yakuza because it might glorify that lifestyle. As the series very, very blatantly says, hey, don't do this. Don't join the Yakuza because you like the games. You're an idiot if you do. Goda is still alive. As mentioned before, the Yakuza series loves bringing back characters from the dead via retcons. This has led to some people to wonder why Goda hasn't been brought back. Now, nobody actually wants him back because, while he's a great character, people are tired of the whole retconning deaths thing, but RGG Studio seemed to love doing it to various important characters, so it wouldn't be all that surprising if they brought him back. They seem to know that fans are actually wondering if he'll ever return, as RGG Studio trolled players and erased his name with the existence of an impersonator that you fight in the castle's arena. But he's just an imposter. Goda is still dead. Well, what if I told you that there's actually some evidence that Goda was brought back from the dead via a retcon all the way back in 2011? Now, Goda is one of the 4 playable characters in Dead Souls, which is a non-canon game, but it is interesting that the game breaks off from the main timeline after Yakuza 4. So lore stuff introduced in the game that takes place years prior to the events of Yakuza 4 should be canon to the main timeline using this logic. So Goda surviving Yakuza 2 should be canon. Maybe not the cybernetic Gatling gun arm, but him being exiled should still be canon. But of course, this is just a theory built off of an oversight. I just thought it'd be fun to mention this. I don't actually think that Goda is alive, or do I think that Dead Souls was intending to imply that he survived in the main timeline? Especially since now we know that Dead Souls may have just been a dream. Uji-1. Eunji-1 is a South Korean rapper who won some kind of contest to appear in At Majima's End. Though you'd be forgiven for not knowing that he was in the game, because he's kinda not. It's very clear that at one point in time, he was supposed to be a character in the game, probably in a sub-story. But he doesn't appear anywhere in the game except for one brief instance where he shows up as a background dancer in the karaoke cinematic for 24 Hour Cinderella. Some people have argued that this was the plan all along, he was only supposed to appear here. But I don't think that's true, as Sega's Korean branch made an entire announcement for his inclusion in the game, with RGG Studio claiming that his love for the franchise made him a perfect fit to introduce the Yakuza series to South Korea. Why would they make this announcement if he was just going to be a literal background character? So I think whatever role he originally had in the game was scrapped. Which is a shame, because if the thing about him being a fan of the series wasn't just promotional talk, and he really was a fan of the series, it must suck to be basically cut out of a franchise you really like. The Celebrity Appearance Curse. The Yakuza series has had a ton of actors who have worked on the franchise over the years, but some of these actors have had some controversies after their appearances in the games. For example, popular comedian Hiroyuki Miyasako played Kanda in Yakuza 3 and Nagamo in Yakuza 6. But a few years after his appearance in Yakuza 6, he was forced to retire from being a comedian after he was involved in a scandal involving actual real-life Yakuza. In June 2019, it was revealed that he, along with some other comedians, had done performances for the Yakuza. Each comedian was paid 1 million yen for their appearance. That's $6,392 in USD. Since then, he's become a YouTuber, and has actually made a bit of a comeback, as he's reprising the role of Kanda in Kiwami 3. Then there's Pierre Taki, a member of the synth-pop group Denki Groove. He's also an actor, and was casted as Hamura in Judgment. But shortly after he recorded his lines for the game, he had a controversy of his own. In March of 2019, it was revealed that he had done some cocaine, and due to Japan's extremely strict drug laws, not only did he receive 18 months in jail, but RGG Studio delayed the release of Judgment so that they could have the character redesigned and dubbed over with a new actor. Though since then, he's made a comeback and still makes music. Then there's Tetsuya Kawago, who plays a fictional version of himself in Yakuza 5. He's a very famous chef in Japan who got into some controversy just a few months after the release of Yakuza 5. In May 2013, it was discovered that his restaurant was charging people for glasses of water 800 yen, which was $8.50 USD at the time. This wasn't told to the customers, and the customers only discovered this by looking at their receipts. He later defended these prices by saying that he was serving high-quality water. Fans of the game then modded Yakuza 5 so that they could beat him up in-game. Then there's Junko Mihara, who has quite the career. She started out as a race car driver, became a singer, and is currently a politician. But Yakuza fans know her as the original voice actress of Reina in the original Yakuza. In August of 2025, a photo of her was uncovered that showed her hanging out with Yakuza members at a golf tournament in 2009. Not only that, but it was reported by tabloids that she had allegedly performed songs for the Yakuza members at a party around the same time. In response to these claims and the photo, her office responded saying that she's attended a ton of events over the years, and she would never participate in an event if she knew it was being organized by criminals. Finally, there's Toru Furuya, who is most famous for his role as Amura in Gundam, but Yakuza fans know him as Bryce Fairchild in Yakuza 8. Only a few months after the release of the game, he confessed to some pretty horrible things. He revealed that he had been cheating on his wife with a fan. Not only that, but he confessed that he hit her several times and pressured her into getting an abortion. Now, all of these controversies has led to some fans to claim that the Yakuza series has a curse of sorts. If you're a celebrity voice actor, or just a celebrity in general, who makes a one-off appearance in the Yakuza series, you're gonna have some kind of controversy. Personally, I think this theory's stupid, as there's been plenty of celebrities over the years who have appeared in only one game that are completely fine and haven't had any kind of controversy. The Bed of Sticks Fighters. In Yakuza 0, there's a fighting arena called the Bed of Sticks. While you only have to go there once during the story, you can return here as either Majima or Kiryu and take on people in the ring. Now, this arena is different from most of the other fighting arenas in the series because the people you fight here are extremely bad people who are literally being held prisoner here. How bad are these people? Well, the people here are all murderers, but some of them are even worse than murderers. First, there's David Diabol, a Russian guy in Japan who surgically enhanced himself to make him the strongest person out there. In order to test out his strength, he attacked and killed a ton of people. He might have killed even more people, as rumors state that bear maulings in the area were actually him, which means that this dude was literally tearing people apart with his bare hands. Pun not intended. Then there's Shiro Tsuchibori, who technically isn't actually a murderer, but he might as well be. He kidnapped 50 people over the course of his criminal career, and held them prisoner, where he dissected them alive, and kept their mutilated living bodies on display. He never killed any of them, because he didn't want to be charged with murder. I guess he didn't realize that kidnapping and torturing people is also illegal. Then there's Masher Juzo, who is also technically not a murderer. He's normally a chef, but he had a side gig of trafficking human organs. But some of the organs he couldn't sell as well as others, so he would cook them and eat them. He would also sell them to his customers, making a whole bunch of people unknowingly cannibals. Like that one episode from Tales of the Crypt, aka the best episode in the series. Next, there's Red Lip Yamamoto, a literal killer clown who would kidnap people and bring them back to his mansion, where he would kill them. The cops in the area actually knew about him, but didn't do anything, as he paid them off. But this didn't last, and he was eventually caught. Honestly, the cops he paid off should have also been sent to the Bed of Sticks. Then there's Masamune Suji, who murdered an entire village in the 1960s. He got away with this crime for about 20 years, and he was only caught because one day he was just like, well, there's no evidence that I killed them, nor is there any witnesses, so I'm gonna tell the police that I did it for the laughs, because they can't throw me in jail for this. They then threw him in jail for this. And finally, there's the worst of them all, at least in my opinion. Ginger Chapman is an American living in Japan who's suspected of killing 10 people. And he did kill these people, but it could never be proven in court, because, and I'm not joking or exaggerating, this man ate his victims. Not part of his victims, no, the entire body. This man ate 10 full people, head to toe. This man left nothing behind, so he couldn't be charged with murder. The rejected alien invasion game. So you think a zombie apocalypse Yakuza game was crazy? Well, it could have been even crazier. In 2020, during a live stream meant to celebrate the franchise's 15th anniversary, it was revealed by Nagoshi that Dead Souls started its life as a completely different non-canon spin-off game about Kiryu and friends facing off against aliens invading Earth, with Nagoshi stating that his primary reason for wanting to do an alien invasion game was to make Kiryu say, quote, "How dare you step on the people's planet with your dirty shoes?" While RGG Studio thought the idea was fun, they ultimately went with the zombie apocalypse idea, most likely due to the fact that the game was releasing in 2011. And people may forget these days, but in the late 2000s and early 2010s, zombie media was absolutely everywhere. The Yakuza 0 companion app. While the Yakuza series didn't have any dedicated games for the PS Vita, which honestly is kinda shocking, that doesn't mean the series didn't have a presence on the console. In February of 2015, the PS Vita received the Yakuza 0 companion app. As the name suggests, the app was meant to be played with Yakuza 0. By downloading your save file and uploading it to the app, you'd be able to use the app to grind out XP and money for either Kiryu or Majima in either the Bed of Sticks fighting arena or via gambling. You could also buy weapons and resources that would be available to you when you got back into the main game. But that's just what the free base version of the app gave you. By paying 500 yen, you could then unlock various minigames. And by minigames, I mean essentially just demos for other games. Some of these games included Special Attack Aircraft Carrier Beluga and Super Monkey Ball. As to be expected, this app was exclusive to Japanese PS Vitas, and since has been delisted, making it one of the most difficult Yakuza experiences to get your hands on, though it's not impossible. Yakuza Ishin PS Vita app. While Yakuza 0's companion app is the more well-known Yakuza PS Vita app, it wasn't the only one, nor was it even the first. In February of 2014, the PS Vita received Yakuza Ishin, free app for PlayStation Vita. Just like with Yakuza 0's companion app, you could grind out XP and money for Yakuza Ishin, but there's slightly more you can do in this app than Yakuza 0's app. Not only did you have access to the game's gambling minigames, but you also had access to Another Life. In fact, the entirety of Another Life was playable. Then there's the Battle Dungeon mode, and just like with Another Life, this was the entire Battle Dungeon. Sadly, this app was also exclusive to Japanese PS Vitas, and it's since been delisted, so it's very difficult to actually get access to this app. Though in all fairness to RGG Studio, I do understand why this app wasn't released in the West. I mean, Yakuza Ishin wasn't even released in the West, so it would be weird to have this, but not the actual game. Yakuza 4's playable characters are inspired by gods. For those outside of Japan, me, this detail about Yakuza 4 probably slipped past you. But each of the 4 playable characters, Kiryu, Sajima, Akiyama, and Tanimura, are inspired by the 4 gods, aka the 4 symbols. These are mythical creatures, or gods, that have seasons, colors, emotions, and elements associated with them. Tanimura represents the turtle. Like a turtle shell, Tanimura has a defensive playstyle, and the turtle's element is water, which matches up with Tanimura's boat chase. Saijima represents the tiger, partially because he has a tiger tattoo, but he's also pretty strong, and the tiger's element is metal. Just like the metal bars of a prison cell. Akiyama represents the bird, as his playstyle is focused on speed. His jacket is also red, which is the color associated with the bird. And the bird's element, fire, matches up with the explosion that gave Akiyama a second chance at life, almost like a phoenix. And finally, shocking nobody, Kiryu represents the dragon, as he's the wisest and the most balanced gameplay-wise. The dragon's element is wood, which matches up with Morning Glory. Also, I mean, come on. Kamutai Magazine. Kamutai Magazine is an in-universe magazine that actually made the jump to real life. 8 issues of this magazine were created over the years, with each issue being given out when you pre-ordered a Yakuza game. Issue 1 was for the original game, Issue 2 was for Yakuza 2, Issue 3 was for Kenzan, Issue 4 was for Yakuza 3, Issue 5 was for Yakuza 4, Issue 6 was for the first Black Panther game, Issue 7 was for the second Black Panther game, and the final issue, Issue 8, was for Yakuza 0. Unfortunately, while these magazine pre-order bonuses are fairly well known, their content isn't. As far as I've been able to tell, none of the magazines have ever been scanned and uploaded online. All we have are a few screenshots. It seems like they were mostly just guides to the game, similar to game manuals. While none of these magazines have ever been scanned, at least to my knowledge, another Yakuza magazine tie-in has been. A special issue of Hot Dog Press, an old magazine series in Japan, was given out for Yakuza 0, and it seems like there are some scans of it online, though I'm not entirely sure where to find them. What species of bear is Yama Orochi? As mentioned before, in Yakuza 5, there's a giant killer bear that you face off against. Yama Orochi is the main antagonist of the hunting side story in the game, and is a very strange-looking bear. So, what species of bear is he? Well, we got 3 different options. First is that he's the last living member of some kind of prehistoric bear species. Now, I don't think this was the actual intent that RGG Studio was going for, but funny enough, very recently, in 2025, a new prehistoric bear species was discovered in Russia. The Iroquois Borishaka. This species of bear was estimated to be extremely big, over 1,500 pounds. This species is actually related to modern-day pandas, and is part of the Huracan genus. While this is in Russia, recent discoveries in Japan have suggested that prehistoric bears from mainland Asia at one point migrated to Japan. So it's possible that Yama Orochi is the last living, I'm not pronouncing that name again, bear. Or he could be another member of the Huracan genus, like Huracan Chioi, which is another recent discovery, this one being from 2023. The second option is that he's simply a brown bear with gigantism. I'm not super convinced about this theory though, as Saejima actually fights a normal brown bear in the sub-story Set Free, and it looks nothing like Yama Orochi. While gigantism would explain how he got so big, that shouldn't make him look completely different from a normal brown bear. I should also mention the Japanese black bear, as Yama Orochi does have a pattern on his stomach similar to those found on the chests of Japanese black bears. Though, as I just said, the patterns are in different locations. One's on the stomach and the other one's on the chest. Finally, there's the boring theory, that it's an original species, like it was created for the game. We actually have evidence for this, as in Yakuza 0, one of the fighters in the beta sticks is literally a giant bear called the Demon Bear. It reuses Yama Oroshi's design, and it's actually given a backstory of sorts. It's mentioned that this bear has near-human intelligence and was found in the Arctic. So it's safe to assume that Yama Orochi and the Demon Bear are the same species. So I think it's safe to say that Yama Orochi is a fictional bear species. Maybe it's a fictional prehistoric bear species? Personally, I like the Huracan theory, so that's the one that I'm gonna accept, even if it's way more likely that RGG Studio intended him to be a fictional species. Shoko Asahara. The Order of Munen Chohep Onest is a cult in Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, Yakuza 6, and Yakuza 7. Their whole thing is giving up everything they own in order to purify their souls. Members also have to break off all relationships they have with people outside of the cult, including family and friends. This cult is actually based on a very real cult. And if you know a thing or two about the history of cults, you probably figured out which cult this was based on upon meeting their original leader in Yakuza 0. Suzuki is very clearly meant to reference Shoko Asahara, the founder and leader of the Doomsday cult, Om Shinrikyo. This cult is actually still active, but its most infamous moment came less than a decade after its foundation. This is the cult responsible for the 1995 Tokyo sarin gas attack, which killed 14 people and injured over 1,000. In response to the attack, Asahara was arrested alongside several other members of the cult. And over 20 years later, in July 2018, Asahara was executed. Now Suzuki, on the other hand, had a completely different life. For starters, his cult, while inspired by Shinrikyo, was much less dangerous, as the cult was mainly just a scam for Suzuki to get rich off of. Though, that being said, he did have his way with various members of the cult using his power, so while they weren't doing bioterrorism, Suzuki was still a complete scumbag. But after being arrested and serving time in jail, Suzuki returned in Yakuza 6, where he was now against cult activities, and worked with Kiryu to bring down the very cult that he had created. This seemingly didn't work as they appeared in Yakuza 7. Suzuki then showed up in Yakuza 8, where he continues his crusade against cults. The Kiwami 3 controversy. I didn't mention this in the actor controversies entry because that entry was about controversies that happened after the actor associated with the controversy appeared in a Yakuza game. This is different, in that RGG Studio knew about this controversy and still went ahead with it. Yakuza 3 Kiwami is a rather controversial game. For the most part, the controversy comes from people not being happy with certain story changes, character design changes, and lighting changes. But there's a part of this controversy that's extremely serious. Many fans of the franchise are extremely upset with RGG Studio over the casting of Teruyuki Kagawa as Hamazaki. In August of 2022, Kagawa confessed to forcefully kissing, groping, and removing somebody's bra. There were also 2 other women who have accused him of similar actions. His role in Kiwami 3 is one of the first projects he's been a part of since the controversy, which has led some fans to speculate that RGG Studio is trying to help him make a comeback. Shockingly, neither Sega or RGG Studio have commented on this controversy, but they have commented on less serious Kiwami 3 controversies, such as the game's lighting. At least, that was true. While I was writing this entry, Kiwami 3's director, Ryosuke Hori, finally made a statement about the recast, in which he said that Kagawa was chosen because they wanted somebody creepy to play Hamazaki, and they thought that he gave a pretty creepy performance. Though, honestly, this isn't actually an acknowledgement of the actual problem. In the interview, he doesn't comment on the allegations at all, instead treating the fact that the character was recast in general as the controversy. So, no, actually, Sega and RGG Studio have not commented on the controversy. Some guy does drugs, we gotta fire him, remove him from the game. Somebody assaults women, I mean, it's not proven, so, I don't know, what's the problem? And that'll do it, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs out there. That was the Yakuza Iceberg, or the Yakuza Iceberg. I got one of those pronunciations right, so I don't know. I've seen so many people say like either one of them. I've always, like I said at the beginning, I always say Yakuza, so I don't know. Bully me in the comments if I'm wrong. You don't even need my permission for that. You're gonna do it anyways. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. That's been a long time coming. People have been wanting this. I've teased it for a while, and yeah, I'm happy to do it. Hopefully this goes better than the My Hero Academia Iceberg. Reception to that was good. It's a good video, but goddamn, that was a miscalculation on how many people I thought would care about that. Or at the very least, YouTube messed with the algorithm. I do think there's a bit of that there too. But yeah, so that was that. Hope you guys enjoyed. And if you got to this part of the video, at the end, what you're watching right now, let me know in the comments that, well, you got this far, and that Mame is a very good boy. For those that don't know, Mame is a dog that's featured in Yakuza 3 and 4, 5, basically throughout the series. But its role gets progressively less and less with each game. Its name was actually changed to Rex in the original American release of the game, which I thought I'd just throw in there as a bonus fact. I don't think it was important enough to have an entry. So yeah, like I've said, I hope you guys enjoyed. You guys gonna get Kiwami 3? Because I'll be honest, I wanted a Kiwami 3 for quite a while, because obviously I really like Yakuza 3's main setting. Not the gameplay. I think it's the worst Yakuza game gameplay wise. But I was really hoping that, it would look good and all that, and it's not looking too great. I think the combat looks solid, but visual wise, it's not great. I know they've talked about it, but and then there's the whole controversy at the end there about Hamazaki's actor, which just puts a sour taste in my mouth. It's just not. I don't think I'm gonna get it. I want to play Dark Ties, but I'm not gonna buy it just to get Dark Ties. Hopefully they release Dark Ties by itself one day, but they probably won't. But yeah, that's it. I mean, the next Iceberg will be will finally be the Hulk Iceberg. I hope you're all excited for that one, because that one's been a very long time coming. And now it's time for me to thank my channel members. For $5 a month, you can get your name at the end of the video, and you can also get extended video previews for Iceberg videos. For example, with the Yakuza Iceberg, you got to see roughly the first 45 minutes of the video early. And for $7 a month, you get all of that, plus you get the videos early, usually 3 to 4 days early. I really hate advertising this stuff because it's necessary and everyone has to do it. It's just how it is. That's how you grow on YouTube. But I always feel like I'm selling my soul. I feel icky. But this stuff really does mean a ton to me, and it really helps me out. I mean, like I said, it helps the channel grow. It helps me do what I do. So. It's a necessary evil that I gotta, actually promote myself. But yeah, thank you to Maurice Deceased, Steven, Digital Medic, Adam Depp, Nathan Tench, The Mr. Traintrack, Lone Thunder, Cowboy Tuba, Solid Fricky, King Fennerer 1987, Moxie, Dats J, Cody Lester, Goat449, Killam, Hunter Gentle, V. Evans, Nora, Milo the Mighty, Mano, Guardian of Brooklyn, J-Max Air, Domeshot 529, Sailor Stell, Papega, Infinity Mark, Vel V, Games with Toasty, The Epic Rager, Titanoboa Hunter, Super Blake Films, Daniel Vale, Spencer Estes, Alan Hamilton, John McIntyre, Timorum Nile, Corvus Seraph, Gavin Grizzle, Kevin Sanders, Your Local Hitman, KB6427, F.A. Mert, Admiral Rat 27, Zachary Monsalve, Maury Doll, Hose Felix, Wilder Diaz, Joe Cyanide, Awesome Man, Shock, Sub the Way, Excusable Fawn, Xenodusk, Daniel Veith, Dewaleg, Infamous Zombie, Soggy Sogs, Rybread12, Philosophia, Boogle Dongle, Stealth Zombie Snake, and Samuel Thickness. I always say it, but your support means the world to me. I will never be able to truly express how much this means to me. And with that being said, I don't really have anything else. I mean, the Hulk Iceberg's coming up next. It's probably going to be a long... No, it's not probably. It's going to be a long one. Hope you guys enjoy. I hope this video does well. I hope this doesn't fail. See you guys next time. Take care.